Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see what if Izuku reached his breaking point. Here is short summary. All heroes have a breaking point. There is only so much before your mind or body breaks under the pressure, and it's when these times happen that heroes rely on those they trust the most. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. The school day at UA had come to an end and Izuku and his classmates were in their dorms preparing for the next day of classes and training. The class had been going over the history of Hero Society, with specific reference to a number of retro heroes with details of their quirks and feats being listed. Izuku, being the overachiever that he is, managed to shorthand every point on every hero, and now that he was in his dorm, he was going to rewrite his notes. Looks like I have a busy night ahead of me. L just needs to get a new notebook, Izuku told himself as he sat down at his writing desk, adorned with All Might memorabilia, with a bobblehead of All Might standing center stage, his toothy grin on full display. Izuku placed his hand under the desk, feeling for a notebook, but there were none left. Ah, man. I must have used the last one when writing the notes on heroes I met during the raid. Looks like I've got to make a quick visit to the mall. Izuku sighed as he looked out the window in his dorm to see the sun was still out. It was the middle of autumn, the days were starting to shorten, and the weather was starting to turn cold. Izuku grabbed his heaviest coat, which was dark green, put on his usual red boots and left his dorm room, passing through the main hall of the dorm. Mineta and Kaminari were sitting on one of the couches, discussing their plans to get a detailed look at the girls, when they least expected it. Mina, Momo and Suyu were on the other couch, chatting as usual. And Ochako was in the kitchen, she was on cooking duty for the day. Hey Deku, what you doing? Ochako chirped, once the sight of Izuku caught her eye. Oh hey, Ochako, I need to head to the mall. I was going to rewrite my notes but I used up all my notebooks, so I'm making a quick trip to the mall. Oh well, be quick, you know what as I was like with keeping us to the curfew. I'll try and get back as quickly as I can. Do you need anything? Izuku leaned over and whispered. No I don't, but thanks for asking. Ochako blurted out, she hadn't expected Izuku to ask her. Okay, I'll get going. See you later, Ochako? Izuku said, puzzled by Ochako's reaction, not noticing the eyes now focused on them, before he made his way to the main entrance and headed to the mall. I think I should get her something, but what? Izuku thought. Meanwhile, in an abandoned warehouse, the League of Villains were planning their next moves. Their work with the Shihasaikai had not been as fruitful as they had wished. They had managed to get a stash of quirk-erasing bullets, but they were so few in number that they were to be saved for emergencies, and thanks to Shigaraki, they had managed to get rid of the nuisance that was Overhaul, whose presence invited challenge within the organization. However, Midoriya and his friends had once again caused their master plan to fall apart, as well as removing a thorn in Shigaraki's side. I hate those brats at UA, jumping into things they have no business being involved in. I agree to Mura. They have proven to be a thorn in our sides, especially the successor of All Might. That boy has caused more pain than he is worth. That kid defeated Muscular. We sent him there to counter his raw power and he beat him down. While his power has not reached anywhere near All Might's level, he is still a force to be reckoned with, but he does have one flaw. His durability, Kurogiri replied, his mist shifting as he answered. Exactly, to be specific, his body cannot handle his power at its full potential, without grievous injury, which is why I called in a favor. Shigaraki scratched his neck as he spoke, a hint of excitement marking his voice. A favor? I asked an old acquaintance of my master to help deal with Izuku Midoriya. He's been watching his movements for the past few days and noticed a common path he used, so I sent him to wait there till Izuku arrives, then we should not worry about him anymore. I see. And what, pray tell, is the quirk of this acquaintance? Let's just say, he turns tank builds into class cannons, if you catch my drift. Tomurua chuckled, leaving Kurogiri to think on his analogy. After a 20-minute walk, made shorter thanks to a shortcut through a small woodland area, which Izuku had used to shorten the time it took for him to collect groceries so he could spend more time on his studies and training. Once Izuku made it to the mall, he headed straight for an office supply store, getting everything he needed and a little extra. A collection of All Might erasers and pens which are half price, what a bargain. Izuku cheered in his head as he paid for his purchases and exited the store. Now I know what Ochako reacted as she did. I strangely asked her. I must have made her feel awkward. I'm an idiot. I need to make it up to her. Izuku thought as he walked slowly through the mall. It was rather busy, so he had to make sure he didn't bump into anyone. There's a nice bakery here. I could pick her up something. She said he liked sweet things, but what kind of sweet things does she like? Izuku mumbled, only to break from him mumbling after hearing someone call his name. Midoriya, hey over here, the voice cried, a hand waving through the crowds. Is that Kirishima? What's he doing here? Izuku pondered as he caught sight of Kirishima and waved to show he had seen him. Hey man, what are you doing out? You're usually in your room studying, why the change in routine? Kirishima asked as he and Izuku headed to a more quiet spot of the mall to walk and talk. I was planning to rewrite my class notes till I noticed I was out of notebooks, so I rushed over. What about you? I needed some new training equipment for training at the dorm, you know, skipping ropes and stuff like that, Kirishima explained as he walked with Izuku. Skipping ropes? Yeah, I've realized that while my unbreakable form can take a lot of hits, I can't keep it up for long, especially under extreme physical stress, so I'm thinking of trying to use skipping speed work in that form to build my endurance, Kirishima explained his plan. He knew from his fight with Rappa and the enhanced thug that he couldn't hold the form for long and his maneuverability was reduced, so anything that could deal with both issues would help him even if it was a little unconventional. Makes sense, plus the coordination of the movement may help you with making more fluid movements in that form. I never thought of that. Thanks, Midoriya, that's what makes you such a great student, you see details that others don't realize are there, Kirishima exclaimed as he wrapped his arm around Izuku as they walked to thank him for the idea. You're welcome, did you get the stuff you needed? Izuku asked, thinking Kirishima had out the stuff in his school bag. Oh, not yet, I'm just here, it takes a while to get to from the dorms. Kirishima grumbled. Well, I know a shortcut, I'll show you when we head back. Cool, Kirishima beamed as he and Izuku made their way to a sports equipment store, buying a set of skipping ropes, some built for speed work and others which were weighted to help increase endurance. On top of that, he also bought a new foam roller and yoga mat. I also thought of trying out yoga. It may not sound the manliest way to build endurance and flexibility, but from what I've been told it's tougher than it looks. I might try out, maybe I could use the static moves to help me control the output of my quirk, Izuku stated, as he and Kirishima made their way to the exit of the mall. Just let me know and we can try it out, maybe get a few of the girls involved, if you catch my drift, Kirishima chuckled, nudging Izuku, who thanks to his social denseness did not click to the joke. Instead it made him remember he had forgotten to do something, stopping him in his tracks. Crap, I forgot something, I'll have to rush so we get back before the curfew, Izuku mumbled. You all right? What did you forget? Kirishima asked once he heard Izuku. I was picking up something from the nice bakery in the store, why don't you head back to the dorms? I don't want you getting in trouble for being late. No chance, we still have a little time and we were going to take that shortcut you mentioned, I'll come with you. Okay. Thanks Kirishima. Izuku nodded as he and the sturdy hero rushed to the bakery. Izuku had heard a few of the girls in the dorm talking about how nice the cakes were from the bakery, so he felt it would be the best way to apologize to Ochako. Once they arrived at the bakery, Izuku rushed in, leaving Kirishima outside the store, and after a rather lengthy wait in a large queue and Izuku's own overthinking, he managed to pick something, a large slice of rich, triple chocolate gâteau covered in milk and white chocolates shaving. What did you pick? Kirishima asked as he and Izuku jogged to the exit, noticing the size of the box, which was larger than he had expected. I packed a chocolate gâteau. Nice, is that for you, Mum? Kirishima asked, with a big smile on his face. No, it's for someone else. Oh, I wonder who, Kirishima stated, surprised by the answer. Can we talk about this after we get out? Izuku grumbled. He didn't want to waste time when they had to focus on moving quickly through the crowd of shoppers. All right. Kirishima sighed a little, annoyed he didn't get an answer, but he didn't mind given how close they were to the curfew time. Once they made it out of the mall and jogged a little further, the pair made it to crossroads with Izuku taking the lead so they could get to the shortcut. "Sue, who's the cake for? Is it for one of the girls in the dorm?" Kirishima asked, leaning closer to Izuku as he spoke. I. Izuku muttered in a flustered state as he started to turn red and fidget with the bag. "Come on, you can trust me. I'm not like that perv Mineta, and I'm not as stupid as Kaminari, so if it's a secret you know I can keep it," Kirishima confidently stated, placing his arm on his chest. "Okay. I bought the cake for Ochako, it's not what it looks like though." Izuku took a deep breath and spoke in a pleading manner. "I knew it," Kirishima yelled with glee, shaking his fist. "You did," Izuku yelped in response. "Of course, there's a little bet going with Mina, Hidarkai and Jiro over potential couples. I decided to join in the little wager and said you and Ochako were a prime candidate for a couple, so when did you start going out?" We're not in a relationship," Izuku exclaimed, only to become more flustered and redder with each passing second. "Who? So why are you getting her a cake then?" Kirishima raised his brow. "As an apology." Izuku asn word. "Apology? What did you do?" Kirishima looked quizzically at Izuku. "When I was heading to the mall, Ochako asked what I was doing and I asked if she wanted anything. She got flustered and starting blushing, before saying she didn't need anything. I now think I embarrassed her by asking, so I want to make it up to her." Izuku explained the situation, his voice becoming marked with nerves as he went on. "Come on, Izuku, you didn't embarrass her, you surprised her. I'm pretty dense with romance and stuff like that, but I can tell that she was taken back by using asking if she wanted anything." "How so?" "She likes you a lot. So imagine if your crush asked you if you wanted anything when they were out, wouldn't you get a bit flustered?" Kirishima posed the question, leaving Izuku to ponder it. You're right, I guess I misread what she did then, huh?" Izuku sheepishly replied, rubbing the back of his head as he spoke. "Overread it is an understatement. So do you like her back?" Kirishima asked, looking for any facial cues that Izuku would show to get a clear idea as to his answer. I'm not sure. I mean, she's great, she funny, strong and driven, she's a great friend, and there have been times I've done what she did when she spoke to me, so I guess I do like her, it's just I worry about what would happen." Izuku smiled as he spoke, thought it disappeared when he thought about the consequences of his potential actions. "What do you mean? I don't want to read her wrong and then strain our friendship, you know what I mean?" Izuku nervously mumbled. "Yeah, I get it. In fact, I have the same issue as you." Kirishima placed a gentle hand on Izuku's shoulder. "You do?" Izuku looked quizzically at Kirishima. He had never expected to hear this from him given how little he talks about anything that wasn't about fighting or being manly. "Yeah. Promise to keep this a secret, right? I haven't told Bakaku this, so don't tell him, all right?" Kirishima sternly stated, point his finger at Izuku to reinforce the point, only to break this serious demeanor with a smile. "Yeah, sure. You have my word, Kirishima," Izuku promised. "Okay. I like Mina. I've liked her since the day she saved her friends from a giant quirk user. She's strong, confident and funny. I don't think she knows or can tell that I like her, but I want to tell her, but I'm scared it would hurt our friendship." Kirishima spoke softly, keeping his head down, showing Izuku that he wasn't this over the top all the time, but he had soft spots and could be anxious or nervous at times, though he wouldn't let it show. "I never thought I'd hear Kirishima talk like this. You never know what people are going through or think until they let you in," Izuku thought to himself before speaking. "Whoa, I guess we are in the same boat. We both like girls, who we are close with, but we fear ruining that closeness." "Exactly," Kirishima proclaimed louder than he and Izuku expected, causing them to both burst out laughing. "You know what we need to do," Izuku stated. "What?" Kirishima looked to Izuku. "We need to go plus ultra and tell them, just need to time it right." Izuku cheered, fist pumping the air. "Ha ha ha, true, though you already covered, you've got that cake, so you tell her when you give it to her." Kirishima pointed to the bag that Izuku was carrying as he spoke. "Oh no, I need to spend like a few months planning this," Izuku yelped. "Ahaha, a few months now, that's too long, man." Kirishima heartily laughed as he and Izuku made it to the woodland area and started walking into it, continuing to discuss their dilemma and a few of the other class relationship predictions. So, you think me and Ochako, Shoto and Momo, Jiro and Kaminari, Tokiyami and Tsuyu and Toru and Ojiro being in couples by the time we leave. What about Mineta? Izuku started listing off the couples, counting them off in his left hand. He's going to leave without a girlfriend unless he somehow finds a way to brainwash Midnight, which would be his only course of actions. He is a bit creepy, to be honest. Izuku chuckled as he and Kirishima made their way through the woodland only to notice a man pacing back and forth on the pathway they were on, around 4 meters away from them. I wonder what he's doing. Kirishima leaned over and whispered to Izuku, only to see the man drop to his knees and start wiping his hands over the ground. Looks like he lost something? Izuku whispered back. Let's help him, the pair said in unison as they walked over to the man. Excuse me sir, are you all right? Midoriya asked. Oh thank heavens. I've been here for half an hour. The man cried with joy, his voice surprisingly high-pitched, turning to face Kirishima and Izuku, tapping them both on the chest and shoulders as if he tried to find something in the dark. What happened? Kirishima asked, scanning the man for any signs of injury. I've lost my sunglasses. I was cleaning them and tripped, thrown my glasses somewhere here. My quirk gives me night vision, but the brighter the light the worse my vision gets. What do the sunglasses like? Kirishima asked. They're a pair of dark gray sunglasses. Can you both help me? The man asked, his hands wide out as he turned in a circle showing the area, his fingertips lightly brushing off the jackets of Kirishima and Izuku. The man was tall, around 6 feet, with ash blonde hair with deep amber eyes, which were barely shown from his squinted eyes. His frame was tall and lanky, almost skeletal in appearance with his sharp cheekbones and skinny fingers. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt and dark gray jeans with dark brown formal shoes as well as a dark gray cap. Sure thing sir, we'll look around for you, Midwara proclaimed with a smile. Thank you both. The man stated, placing his hands on Kirishima's and Izuku's shoulders, lightly sliding his hands down their arms. Okay. I'll take the left-hand side, you take the right, Midoriya? Kirishima asked, pointing to his left. Sure. Izuku nodded as he and Kirishima made their way to the 2 sides of the path and searched for the glasses. After 10 minutes of searching, Kirishima found the glasses. They were dirty from the fall and lightly scuffed, but nothing that would affect their function. I've found them, Kirishima yelled as he jogged over to the man and placed them in his hand. Thank you, the man said as he bowed in appreciation. You're very welcome, Izuku and Kirishima stated in uniform as the man placed his glasses. Before you go, I have to do something to thank you both. The man placed his hand into his pocket to compensate his helpers. No, there's no need to pay us back. Kirishima raised his arms and tried to wave off the gift, causing the man to pull his hand out from his pocket. Well, can I at least know your names? The man asked, gesturing to the boys. Sure, I'm Kirishima, you can call me Red Riot, Kirishima stated confidently, placing his arm over his chest, his hand on his heart. And I'm Izuku. Izuku was stopped mid-sentence when he felt several blows strike his chest, sending him skidding across the ground, his feet digging into the ground. What the? Kirishima jailed as he too felt a flurry of blows his chest, sending him flying back. You okay, Kirishima? Izuku asked, looking to his friend to see if he had been hurt. Why the hell did he attack us? We didn't do anything, Izuku thought, trying to decipher the man's motive. I'm fine, man. He didn't hit very hard. What about you? What's this guy's problem? Kirishima told himself, not wanting to show his attacker that he was aggravated. I'm fine. Maybe his quirk's super speed? Izuku states as he checked himself for injuries. Maybe, but why aren't we in pain? Kirishima asked as he touched his chest. The blows had felt as if he was being tapped with force, but just enough to annoy someone, rather than what you would expect from someone intending to hurt another person. Maybe that's a side effect of him hitting so fast. He sacrifices power for speed. Whatever it is, we'll find out. Izuku stated, offered a potential answer before activating one for all. The attacker, as this happened, straightened up, fixed the creases in his shirt sleeves before removing his sunglasses and placing them in his pocket. Now kids, I have a job to do, and it involves you, Izuku. I wonder what he's doing. Kirishima leaned over and whispered to Izuku, only to see the man drop to his knees and start wiping his hands over the ground. Looks like he lost something? Izuku whispered back. Let's help him, the pair said in unison as they walked over to the man. Excuse me sir, are you all right? Midoriya asked. Oh thank heavens. I've been here for half an hour. The man cried with joy, his voice surprisingly high-pitched, turning to face Kirishima and Izuku, tapping them both on the chest and shoulders as if he tried to find something in the dark. What happened? Kirishima asked, scanning the man for any signs of injury. I've lost my sunglasses, I was cleaning them and tripped, thrown my glasses somewhere here. My quirk gives me night vision, but the brighter the light the worse my vision gets. What do the sunglasses like? Kirishima asked. They're a pair of dark gray sunglasses, can you both help me? The man asked, his hands wide out as he turned in a circle showing the area, his fingertips lightly brushing off the jackets of Kirishima and Izuku. The man was tall, around 6 feet, with ash blonde hair with deep amber eyes, which were barely shown from his squinted eyes. His frame was tall and lanky, almost skeletal in appearance with his sharp cheekbones and skinny fingers. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt and dark gray jeans with dark brown formal shoes as well as a dark gray cap. Sure thing sir, we'll look around for you, Midoriya proclaimed with a smile. Thank you both. The man stated, placing his hands on Kirishima's and Izuku's shoulders, lightly sliding his hands down their arms. Okay. I'll take the left-hand side, you take the right, Midoriya? Kirishima asked, pointing to his left. Sure. Izuku nodded as he and Kirishima made their way to the two sides of the path and searched for the glasses. After 10 minutes of searching, Kirishima found the glasses. They were dirty from the fall and lightly scuffed, but nothing that would affect their function. I've found them, Kirishima yelled as he jogged over to the man and placed them in his hand. Thank you, the man said as he bowed in appreciation. You're very welcome, Izuku and Kirishima stated in uniform as the man placed his glasses. Before you go, I have to do something to thank you both. The man placed his hand into his pocket to compensate his helpers. No, there's no need to pay us back. Kirishima raised his arms and tried to wave off the gift, causing the man to pull his hand out from his pocket. Well, can I at least know your names? The man asked. Sure. I'm Kirishima, you can call me Red Riot, Kirishima stated confidently, placing his arm over his chest, his hand on his heart. And I'm Izuku. Izuku was stopped mid-sentence when he felt several blows strike his chest, sending him skidding across the ground. What the? Kirishima jailed as he too felt a flurry of blows his chest, sending him flying back. You okay, Kirishima? Izuku asked, looking to his friend to see if he had been hurt. Why the hell did he attack us? We didn't do anything, Izuku thought. Yeah, he didn't hit very hard. What about you? What's this guy's problem? Kirishima told himself. I'm fine. Maybe his quirk's super speed? Izuku states as he checked himself for injuries. Maybe, but why aren't we in pain? Kirishima asked as he touched his chest. The blows had felt as if he was being tapped with force, but just enough to annoy someone rather than what you would expect from someone intending to hurt another person. Maybe that's a side effect of him hitting so fast. He sacrifices power for speed. Whatever it is, we'll find out. The man straightened up, fixing the creases in his shirt sleeves before removing his sunglasses and placing them in his pocket. Now kids, I have a job to do, and it involves you, Izuku Midori, so Kirishima. I am giving you a chance to walk away, this does not concern you. The man spoke sternly, pointing to Izuku before moving his gaze and finger toward Kirishima as he spoke. I'm not leaving my friend to fight alone. So thanks for the offer, but I'm staying. Kirishima fired back. You've got guts, Red Riot. I'll give you that, but you'll fall all the same. Who the hell are you and why are you here? Izuku yelled. I'm here to kill you, Izuku, that's it. And you can call me Glass. Glass smiled menacingly, his voice as cold as ice and filled with venom. Who sent you? Izuku yelled as he activated full cowling. I'll stay at 5%. I don't know what his quirk can do or how strong he is, so I don't want to go out at full strength without a plan. It doesn't matter who sent me. Focus on what's happening right now, Glass yelled in anger. Looks like we won't be getting back before Aizawa's curfew, Kirishima grumbled, knowing full well how Aizawa would react. It looks like it. We need to alert the heroes. He could be too much for us to handle, Izuku stated he. Alright. I'll keep him occupied, you send an alert, Kirishima stated as he activated his hardening quirk and rushed towards Glass. On it. Izuku grabbed his phone and opened his hero app, and prepared the details he needed to send to the pros, but it would take at least 8 minutes before any pros would arrive, so as he did this he rushed from place to place, breaking his pattern to make him a harder target to track. Kind of a lame villain named Glass, make you sound kind of weak, Kirishima yelled as he closed the gap between him and Glass, who had assumed a fighting stance, his arms stretched out in front of him but held close together. His hands were open with the blade of the hand pointing at his opponent, ready to redirect their attack. Kirishima threw a powerful straight right only for Glass to slip the punch and threw a flurry of punches to the side of his body. They didn't do much damage but hit just hard enough to make Kirishima back off. Kirishima, however, like the tank he was, decided to push again, trying to throw a flurry of hooks, but Glass was too quick and again landing a flurry of punches to Kirishima's face, arms and body. How you feeling, Red Riot? Glass taunted, only to see a flash of green Koing flying towards him. He's acting as a decoy, keeping my line of sight off Izuku so he could get alert the pros, Glass thought as the glow of green lighting came ever closer. Smash! Izuku thought as he aimed for Glass's head with his right leg, only to miss it by a few millimeters, allowing the lighting emanating from his body to make contact with his skin. Glass, however, used this to land a quickie flurry again to Izuku's body, which didn't do more than sting. I expected he would throw a kick once he was done. Looks like I've got to step up the pace before the pros get here, Glass told himself as he watched Izuku's kick miss him. I missed. You okay, Kirishima? Izuku grumbled as he checked on his friend. I'm fine. Wait, what's going on with my clothes? Kirishima grinned, only to notice that something wasn't right. What is it? Izuku looked down to his shirt, pinching the material, noticing it felt like hard glass. Both boys noticed that their clothes were falling apart, which under most circumstances would be expected, but here it didn't make sense. Their jackets and shirts were not torn like normal fabric but were in fact cracked like glass and shattering on impact with the ground. What the hell? Kirishima grumbled as he pinched his shirt and noticed it felt like it was made of some type of ceramic material, snapping it with nothing more than a twist. Does he have a transformation quirk? I'm not sure. Izuku sighed, only for Glass to interrupt him. Are you both done yet? I thought heroes in training were supposed to fight to the end. Glass taunted, lower his hands. He's really getting on my nerves, Kirishima growled as he lunged forwards with a powerful overhand right, only to miss by the smallest of margins and received a powerful kick to the stomach, followed by Glass grabbing him by the face and slamming him into the ground, keeping him in position with his hand over his face. Predictable. Kirishima! Izuku cried as he rushed to save his friend, moving at top speed to then jump into the air and throw a powerful kick, which landed on Glass's arm, which was raised to block the strike, breaking his grip on Kirishima, allowing Kirishima to get back on his feet and catch his breath. Shit, that hurt, Glass told himself as he dealt with a flurry of shots of Izuku, who was mixing his offense up with a mix of swift punches and powerful chopping kicks which were barely being blocked or parried. Glass, however, kept his composure and managed to grab hold of Izuku's right arm by the elbow, allowing him to set up a swift elbow to Izuku's head before front kicking him away. Are you alright? Izuku asked, not noticing the gash that had opened on his head from Glass's elbow strike. I think. Shit, Kirishima growled. What is it? Izuku worriedly asked, turning to see what was the problem. He's cracked my hardening quick. Kirishima grumbled as put his hand to his forehead and noticed it was bleeding. His arms were also showing signs of cracking as well. But how? He didn't even hit you with anything serious, Izuku stated, stunned by the fact. That can't be right. He's fighting in a Wing Chun style. His blows don't hit hard as he is relying on overwhelming speed to counter us before we could land anything significant. Somehow Glass is hitting hard enough in this style to cause serious injury to someone as tough as Kirishima. Izuku's mind went into overdrive, trying to break down what he had seen and experienced so far to come up with an answer, but Kirishima beat him to the punch. It must be his quirk acting on us, which is bad if we cannot keep him at range, Kirishima growled, as he refocused on his quirk to harden again. Okay, we just have to keep this up until the pros arrive, Izuku whispered as he entered a fighting stance, His legs spread wide for greater stability, allowing his full cowling to increase in power. I think I need to turn up the heat a bit. It'll go to 12%, Izuku thought turned to an agonizing scream as he clutched his right arm. What's that matter? Kirishima scanned Izuku up and down. I think I've broken my elbow, Izuku mumbled, clasping his elbow. He was used to the feeling of broken bones and could tell a broken bone by the type of pain he felt. What? Kirishima bellowed, in shock. Haha, at last my quirk is finally taking full effect. Glass chuckled to himself, smiling as the thought went through his head, keeping his distance as he observed the fight. While he had a job to do, it didn't hurt to enjoy the moment. What are you doing to us? Izuku yelled to Glass, noticing his smile. I see. You haven't figured it out yet, and I heard you were the brains of Class 1A when it came to identifying powers. I know it's a transformation quirk. You're on the right track, Izuku. What's the point of keeping it a secret? When I'm done with both of you, I won't have to worry about anyone knowing my quirk's effect. Glass pointed mockingly towards Izuku and Kirishima, acting as if he was broadcasting a quiz show to the public. You see my quirk is called Fragility. Whatever I touch with my skin becomes progressively more fragile. The tougher the material, the longer it takes, and the longer I have contact with the object, the more fragile the material becomes. That explains it. He's weakened our bodies so we can't take as much damage. Kirishima looked to Izuku as he spoke, his eyes widened at the realization. He must know I have trouble with my durability and how it relates to my quirk. He must be working for the League of Villains. How else would he know? Izuku grumbled, as the thought of the League of Villains targeting him crossed his mind. What do we do now? Kirishima asked his friend. We can't run. He could target civilians. All we can do is weather the storm. Now that you both know my secret, I think it'll end it now. Glass confidently stated as he bull rushed the pair. Kirishima reactivated his quirk and charged forward while Izuku rushed forwards, throwing more kicks and punches, but Glass noticed something different in his form. You're kidding me. You've moved the power away from your arm so you could fight on. I admire your tenacity, Deku, but you're nothing but a liability now. Glass stated in surprise as he saw Izuku's cowling form cover his entire body except his right arm. This kid is as tenacious and creative as Shigaraki described. I know it was the right call to watch him closely for a few days. He's got power and speed, which I know will be too much for me if I can't weaken him now, but at least I know his moveset. Glass thought. He had stalked Izuku after his classes had come to an end, managing to catch him during his after-dinner workouts, taking advantage of the resources available to the League of Villains. Shut up. Only a coward tries to distract an opponent while fighting, Kirishima bellowed as he tried to strike Glass, but he wasn't fast enough, resulting in a strike to his chest. Small flakes of stone-like skin sent into the air from the strike, but no blood. You've got heart, kid, but it won't be enough. Wait, your bleeding stopped? Glass mumbled as soon as he noticed the problem as he looked at Kirishima's stone-like skin and saw that the distinctive cracking that occurred from prolonged contact with his quirk had vanished. His quirk must have a regenerative quality. He can harden his body more and more, allowing him to neutralize my quirk. This thought caused Glass to have a lapse in his attention, allowing Kirishima to land a kick to his body, winding him. Not so slow now, am I? Kirishima growled, using the kick from Izuku to grab Glass by the hair to drive his hardened knees directly into his face, only to raise him up and grabbing his arm to put him into an armbar. Izuku now. Lurstjum screamed as Izuku threw a powerful spinning roundhouse kick with his left leg, his bare shin connecting with Glass's head, knocking him from Kirishima's grasp. The kick had, however, ended in a loud crack, with Izuku trying to hold the pain he felt from showing. Damn it, my legs were almost broken. If I go too far I won't be able to fight. Izuku thought as he put weight on his left leg, feeling the bones crack as he shifted his weight. Cough. Cough. Glass spat out a few teeth as blood poured from his mouth as he tried to rise to his feet, his ears ringing and his balance. I'll give you a chance to surrender, Kirishima stated as he loomed over his fallen opponent, his right hand raised to strike. Never, Glass hissed as he lunged from his downed position and grabbed Kirishima by the wrist, to then grab him by the throat, lifting him up. Let him go. Izuku cried as he threw a flurry of punches of kicks, deactivating his full cowling on his injured arm and leg, but Glass used Kirishima to block them, only to then chokeslam him into the ground and using the moment of shock to grab Izuku's arms to then trip him onto the ground. "I won't let you live through this." Glass rained down blows as he quirk had full reign to work on Izuku. Izuku tried to kick him off but Glass onded the by crushing his legs with his now bare feet, making skin contact with Izuku. "Bastard. I have to get up, or Izuku will die." Kirishima winced as he moved. He felt his armored skin cracking and flaking around his throat, but it wasn't enough to keep him down. "Red Riot Unbreakable." Kirishima screamed as he grabbed an unaware Glass from behind and suplexed him into the ground. Glass gasped from the impact on his unprepared body, but he wasn't an amateur. He had taken hits like this before and was able to get to his feet. "What's this?" Glass mumbled as he looked upon Kirishima's unbreakable form. Kirishima's skin was now as rough and hard as unpolished granite. His joints and skin creaked and crunched with every movement as if his joints and skin were grinding against itself. "I will not let you past me." Kirishima screamed as he rained hard blows to Glass's body while keeping a tight grip on Glass's shirt. "I will not fail." Glass hissed as he grabbed Kirishima's chest using the plates and ridges that had formed on his skin as grab points. Glass focused all his attention on his quirk, trying to make Kirishima's body as fragile as possible while Kirishima focused on keeping his body as hard possible. All the while the pair rained down blows in an attempt to break each other's positions. As the blows rained down on both combatants, the words of a long-retired hero played in Kirishima's head, pushing him to keep fighting no matter the pain and no matter the cost to himself, so long as his friend was safe. "Anyone who is not afraid of certain death is just a huge idiot. I'm scared of villains and of dying, but I know something even scarier. The last expression of someone dying and being unable to save them." As this was going on, Izuku lay on the ground, his body screaming in agony. Even the adrenaline coursing through his body wasn't enough to dull the pain. "I have to stop him. I have to stand." Izuku winced as he slowly pushed himself from the ground. He could feel his bones, his muscles, even his skin begin to crack with every movement he made. Even an act as simple as breathing caused him unimaginable pain. A true hero always does what's right no matter what it costs them, Izuku thought as he managed to get to his feet, and with the last ounce of strength he activated OFA, covering his entire body as he sprang towards Glass, raising his right leg to land a fight-ending kick, but the very act of jumping resulting in Shinji feeling shards of bone tear across his legs from the inside. "Ah!" Izuku screamed as he felt his body being torn apart by the power of OFA, and through his sheer willpower he focused on his target, his vision blacking out for mere moments only to return to show him flying towards his opponent. "What?" Glass gasped as he saw Izuku flying towards him, and he tried to turn his head to dodge the attack, but Kirishima thrust his hand under his jaw and squeezed tightly, holding Glass's head in place. Izuku, as he flew towards Glass, could feel his skin cracking, his muscles snapping and his bones crunching, but he didn't care. All he cared about was landing his final attack. "Come on, Deku. Street Lewis smash!" Izuku screamed from the top of his lungs as he landed his kick, which caused Glasses to slump over, his eyes now rolling in the back of his head as he crashed into the ground, tearing chunks out of the ground as the shockwave of the quick cut through the trees of the woodland. However, as soon as the kick landed, Izuku felt his shin shatter and curl around Glass's head, only to crash into the ground once Glass had fallen to the ground limp and unconscious. "We got him!" Kirishima gasped as he deactivated his unbreakable form and collapsed to the ground, turning to see Izuku, who was lying face down in the dirt unmoving. "Midoriya, come on, man." Kirishima got up slowly and limped to his friend, turning him onto his back. His skin resembled that of cracked glass, with fracture lines running all over his body. Blood leaking from these cracks as well as from his eyes, nose, ears and mouth. If it wasn't for his chest slowly rising up and down, Kirishima could have sworn that he was dead. "Come on, Izuku. Stow WTH me." Kirishima bellowed, leaning down to check Izuku's heart rate, only to hear two voice call from behind him as well as a number of sirens. "Izuku, Kirishima, Aizawa." Kirishima mumbled. His voice was weak and his movements sluggish once the adrenaline started to run out. "Midoriya, All Might." Aizawa and Toshiniro were in full sprint, the sound of sirens echoing behind them. Izuku was in his usual attire except for a puffy black jacket which he had over his costume, due to the cold weather. Toshinori meanwhile was dressed in a white shirt and dark blue dress trousers, his skeletal figure making the clothes look oversized, which wasn't helped by the amount of material that waved around as he ran. "Are you both all right? Oh God. Over here?" Izuku gasped at the sight in front of him, only to turn and cry for the emergency services that had accompanied them. "I'm fine. My quirk saved me. Izuku, he looks bad," Kirishima whimpered. "He'll be okay. Don't worry," Toshihiro panted, trying to reassure Kirishima, though his voice showed his worry as he looked at his successor's broken body and the blood dripping from his skin. "Don't worry, young Midoriya, you'll be okay," Toshinori mumbled, placing his hand on Izuku's forehead, only to hear the skin crack from the lightest touch. The ambulance crew arrived along with 2 police cars, who proceeded to secure the area and handcuff Glass, lying him on his stomach on the ground. Aizawa watched over him just as an extra precaution. Kirishima meanwhile was being checked by the ambulance crew. Other than a few scrapes and bruises, he had gotten away without any serious injuries. Toshinori meanwhile had jumped into the ambulance that Izuku was in and joined the crew as they rushed Izuku to hospital. "Who are you?" Aizawa coldly stated. To Glass, on the ground, he did not seem a dangerous threat with his ragged clothes and badly bruised body and face, on top of his gaunt appearance, but Aizawa knew that looks could be deceiving, and Izuku's current condition proved that Glass was a formidable foe. "It doesn't matter." Glass mumbled, only to receive a kick to his side, hitting his liver. While his role as a teacher at UA discouraged such actions as a form of interrogation, it did not mean he was banned from such actions, and given that one of his prized students' lives was on the line, the general guidelines could be warped. "I'll ask again. Who are you?" "Damn it." Glass coughed in pain as he felt as if his liver had been forced to the other side of his body. "That isn't an answer." Aizawa scowled, preparing his boot to hit the same place again. "All right, the name's Glass." Glass wheezed as he spoke, his body still trying to recover from the liver kick. "Glass? Yes. You want me to spell it out for you?" Glass stated sarcastically, trying to goad Aizawa even in his condition. Must be a clue to his quirk. Aizawa thought as Kirishima slowly walked over to him. He had bandages covering his arms, legs and head. "You should be sitting in the ambulance," Aizawa glared, as if he was preparing his quirk for use. Given how badly injured Izuku was, he didn't want to risk another student being seriously injured, especially under his watch. "I'm okay. They're surprised I got away with so few injuries. Are you trying to get information?" Kirishima stated, only to look down to the ground to see Glass lying there. His face was swollen and badly bruised from the kick Izuku landed. "Attempting to. Specifically, I'm trying to find out what his quirk is." "You're going to have to ask nicely, Eraserhead, haha." Glass sarcastically chuckled, showing him a crooked smile, with gaps where teeth were once well rooted now bled. "Well, funny enough, he thought it would be a great idea to tell us while we were fighting him. His quirk is called Fragility." Kirishima chuckled. "Fragility? I've never heard of a Fragility quirk before." Aizawa grumbled, rubbing his chin, trying to remember if he had ever known or faced a similar quirk, but nothing came to mind. He said that the quirk required him to make skin contact in order to activate it. The longer the contact, the more brittle the object became. "I see. That would explain the severity of Izuku's injuries." Aizawa mumbled, rubbing his chin. "Damn it, kid. You ruined that suspense." Glass grumbled, only to receive a swift kick to the ribs from Aizawa. "Be silent. Do you have any idea as to why he targeted you both?" Aizawa turned to continue speaking with Kirishima. "I'm not sure. Though he said he was only there for Izuku, he gave me a chance to leave." Kirishima scratched his head, trying to remember. "And you stayed?" "Of course. What kind of hero runs away leaving their friend in danger?" Kirishima bellowed, crossing his arms like the idol he wished to emulate. "I wouldn't expect anything less," Aizawa stated softly, catching Kirishima off with the compliment. "Thanks, sir." Kirishima smiled. "So, it seems we have a villain who has some objective to kill Izuku. We know that Izuku has been targeted by the League of Villains in the past, so I think it's safe to assume that you must be an acquaintance of Shigaraki, who charged you with the task of killing Izuku. Your boss has treated my student's life on more than one occasion and has sent people to kill him, and Izuku has managed to stop them, and you're the same. A failed attempt, or am I wrong?" Aizawa laid out his reasoning, which brought about a foul scowl upon Glass's face. I must say you good at deducing things, Eraserhead. But I'm not giving anything away, Glass growled. Your scowl suggests otherwise. Aizawa replied as he motioned 2 police officers over to him. They raised him to his feet and walked him to a police van to be investigated further. What are you going to do now? Kirishima asked. I've got to let the class know what happened. Aizawa looked at his mobile phone, taking a mental note of the time. I'll come. No, you need to be checked further by the hospital. Aizawa interrupted Kirishima, looking the boy up and down. I'm fine. They already said I had no significant injuries. Kirishima fired back, despite how tired he felt, his usual vigor seemed to remain. All right. Get everything you need. Aizawa sighed, rubbing his eyes. These kids are going to put me in an early grave. As their teacher, it's my job to make sure they are safe, but today shows that even with our precautions we are not enough. Without Kirishima, Izuku would be dead. There's no doubt. Given his current state, I believe it would be best to advise the students to accompany one another when they are outside the school grounds. Perhaps Nezu can inform the rest of the school in the event Ua is directly targeted. Aizawa monologued in his head. All right. Kirishima nodded and grabbed his bag, noticed that the ambulance crew had not taken the Izuku's carrier bag, which had his notebooks and pens as well as the cake he bought for Uraraka. I'll make sure she knows. Kirishima mumbled as he lifted the bag and rushed back to Aizawa. Is that everything? Aizawa scanned the boy and the environment using his keen eyes to see if anything of note had been left. Yes, sir. Kirishima nodded. All right, also take this. You get a cold if you don't wrap up warmly. Aizawa handed Kirishima his jacket, which he put on. Despite how light it felt, it was well insulated and warm. He comes off all cold and impersonal, but deep down, he cares. The definition of manliness, Kirishima thought. Bring a smile to his face, which Aizawa caught in his peripheral, bring a sense of warmth to his heart. As the pair made their way to the dorms, the ambulance had arrived at the hospital and Izuku was quickly rushed to surgery. Izuku was in a severe condition as he had been hemorrhaging internally so much so that the blood was leaking through the cracks in his skin. His arms and legs were broken, with his shin bones piercing the skin. Recovery girl had been called and was arrived just before Izuku arrived, and as soon as she saw the boy, she knew she had her work cut out. Will he be all right? Toshinori looked to Recovery girl, who was doing all she could to reverse the damage that had been done, just enough to allow Izuku to be taken in for surgery. I don't know, Toshi, he's in a terrible state. I've never seen anything this bad before. But I'll try my best. Recover girl grimaced. Only to give a reassuring smile to her old friend. She had seen many serious injuries in her times, and she had seen many die from wounds less serious than Izuku's, but she still had to try no matter what. Thank you. Toshinori sighed, his voice weaker than ever. 5 hours later, and after lengthy surgery, Izuku was placed in an intensive care ward. While the surgery had managed to stabilize his body to allow him to heal, but he was still at risk of infection or his own body being too weak to keep on living. Toshinori sat at Izuku's bedside, hunched over, his head resting on his hands, with his elbows resting on his thighs, keeping a watchful eye on the boy as he lay there. The beeping of the heart monitor and the raising of his chest showed Toshinori that his successor, his friend and the closest thing to a son he had, was alive, but only by a thread. Please, one for all, give Izuku the power to get through this. He has so much to do and I cannot go on without him. Please keep him alive. Kirishima and Aizawa arrived at the dorms and made their way to the main living hall, only to be surrounded by the rest of the class. Except for Bakugo, who was sitting on the couch flicking through a magazine. What the hell happened to you? You look like you had a fight with All Might. Kaminari gasped as he looked at the bruise and cuts that marked Kirishima's face, which poked through the bandages. Where did you go? We didn't see you after school, Mineta asked. You had us worried. We're in breach of the curfew, Tenya barked, his hand chopping the air as he spoke. We heard sirens coming from the woodlands west of here. Was it a fight, a robbery? Shoji asked in a concerned tone, poking his mouth like appendage between Sato and Shiro. What about Deku? Did you see him? Is he okay? Uraraka worriedly asked, which was soon followed by a flurry of other questions from everyone else. Enough. Let Kirishima speak. Aizawa bellowed, activating his quirk, his eyes glowing red and his hair rose into the air. Well, where do I begin? Kirishima scratched his head. The beginning, Kaminari stated, trying to lighten the mood only to receive a series of annoyed stares and a stab in the neck from Jerpa's earphone jacks. Okay. Well, I was out getting new training gear, and I bumped into Izuku. He was getting new notepads. We got what we needed, and Izuku showed me a shortcut which we took. We saw this guy who looked in distress. We went over and he asked us to find glasses. I found them and gave them to the man who thanked us. He asked for our names and the next thing I know he attacks us. Geez, what was that guy's problem? Mintia huffed. He said he was there to fight Izuku and offered me a chance to get away, I reused. Just like a true hero, Tokiyami seriously stated. What happened next? Mina asked. We fought and after I don't know how long we managed to knock the villain out. What was his name? Bet it's something super badass, Zero stated, only to lean over and nudge Kaminari. He called himself Glass. Nah, that's lame, Kaminari replied, nudging Zero back. What about Deku? Uraraka asked, her voice shaky and marked with worry. I saw him lying unconscious, and I tried to wake him up. He was in a bad way, Kirishima worriedly stated, his eyes wide and beginning to sting with tears as the incident replay in his mind, only for Aizawa to enter the conversation, noticing Kirishima's distress. I arrived with all might. Izuku had sent a distress call out on his phone and we arrived with the support of the police. Izuku is at the hospital. Aizawa explained, inadvertently causing the room to burst into panicked yells and cries. We have to see him, he'll need the support, being in hospital can be so lonely, Mina proclaimed. Let's get a support package made, food, drinks, you stuff to help him relax, Hidakari stated, waving her invisible hands as she moved towards the kitchen, checking the pantry for food, followed by Sato, who started pulling pots and pans out. I'll bake some treats. Anyone knows what Izuku likes, Sato proclaimed to the room, as he got the pots and pans out of the cupboards. I'll look for books, DVDs and anything he'd watch. Ojirio headed to the dorm storage room. It had been stocked with books, DVDs and numerous other items. It had been Nezu's idea to provide these resources to help make the dorms more familiar and homely. I'll help you. Zero tapped Ojiro on the shoulder, following him to the storeroom. Yeah, me too. Kaminari bellowed as he joined the group with Mineta, Koda and Aoyama following suit. The room was large and required a good number of people to dig through it. I'll make a set of pajamas, and if there is anything we can't get or find, I'll use my quirk to make it. Momo offered to get a set of cheers from Mina and the other girls. We need to calm down. We don't even know Izuku's condition, Iida barked. Though it hurt him to speak like this, as it was his best friend that was hurt, he still had to take charge. No one listened and continued to tear the place apart, even Todoroki and Tokiyami, who weren't the most involved members of the class when it came to personal matters, joined in, with Tokiyami sending Dark Shadow ahead to grab a number of books, games and other items, while Tokoroki had joined those in the kitchen, offering to speed up the cooking process with his fireside. As this was going on, Bakugo lowered his magazine and sighed. That damned nerd got himself into trouble again. Bakugo raised his magazine and continued reading. It wasn't his usual response to be so quiet, but even he knew at some point was better to keep silent. As this happened, Aizawa felt a buzz in his pocket. It was his mobile phone. Aizawa removed his phone and saw that Toshinori had texted him. Izuku is in surgery. They're worried that he may not be strong enough to survive the surgery. Aizawa, rather than reply, instantly took a deep breath and sighed. All Might has just texted me to say that Izuku is in surgery. They're confident that he will respond well to treatment if the surgery goes well. Aizawa projected in his usual non-emotional manner to the room. A round of relieved sighs played through the room at the response. As he spoke, he swiftly slipped his phone into his pocket. I can't tell them the truth, not yet. They would panic and act irrationally if I told them the full truth. A rational decision to save them. I hate this. Aizawa thought. He had always been a supporter prominent of deception, as it helped with his line of work, but with his students, now that he had grown to know and care for them, he hated lying to them on important matters. They had seen and been through more than most, but they were still kids. A lie to keep them safe was better than a truth that leads to harm. Listen up. It would be best for everyone to try and relax. I know this is a lot to take in, but we must not panic. It may be some time before you are allowed to see Izuku-sai. We'll let you know if anything changes. In the meantime, I will be in my room. If anyone has any concerns or worries, just knock on my door, alright? And class activities and homework will be postponed until further notice. The room was silent. Even such a rare relief from activities and work wasn't enough to wring even a weak yell of happiness. Aizawa sighed and turned to make his way to his room, only to stop in front of Kirishima. I know you've been through a lot today. If you need to talk, my door is open. Aizawa placed a comforting hand on Kirishima's shoulder and spoke softly. Kirishima nodded and Aizawa let go and made his way to his room, at which Kirishima took the small plastic bag in hand and headed for one of the couches in the main room. You must be starving, Kiri, Mina yelled to Kirishima. Nah. I'm not hungry. Kirishima mumbled as he took a seat on the couch, next to Bakugo. The worry had suppressed his appetite, but he knew he had to eat. Eat, you damned idiot. You can't be a hero if you're not eating, Bakugo grumbled as he looked at his magazine. I guess you do care. Thanks, man, Kirishima told himself as he looked to his rather blunt friend and smiled. You sure you don't want anything? We have some leftovers if you want them? Mina asked. I think I'll have something to eat. Thanks, Mina, Kirishima called back, getting a thumbs up from Mina, who pulled out the leftover to reheat them. After which Kirishima rubbed his eyes and yawned, only to look at the bag, at which point he rose to his feet, bag in hand, and walked towards Uraraka, who was standing close to one of the elevators away from any of the class. Uraraka. Yes, Kirishima, what is it? Uraraka smiled, though her smile seemed to be forced to some extent. Can I talk with you, in private? Kirishima leaned in and whispered to her, before looking around him to make sure no one was looking. Okay. Uraraka stated in a confused tone as they walked to one of the study rooms. So what did you want to speak about? I wanted to give you this. Kirishima handed the bag to Ochako, who pulled a small white box out and opened it to find a chocolate gâteau. The icing had been dented during the fight, but it was still intact. Thanks, Kirishima. Ochako took the box in both her hands, looking at the gift with an awkward gaze, getting a worried look in response from Kirishima. Oh no, it didn't get it for you, Midoriya did. Kirishima raised his hands and shook them in an attempt to dispel the potential connotations of his actions. Deku got this. For me? Ochako mumbled. Look back at the cake, taking a. Yeah, he told me that you had a funny moment when he asked you if you wanted anything from the mall, Kirishima explained, resulting in Uraraka's blushing a vibrant shade of red. He didn't, I mean we did. Oh God, how'd I explain it? Uraraka muttered, fumbling over her words. You don't need to explain anything, I get it. You like him, and he likes you. Izuku likes me. Yeah, he's scared to say. But I think when Izuku gets better, you should tell him how you feel. He's scared. Uraraka raised her brow in surprise. She had seen what Izuku had put himself through with a smile on his face. She had seen him go against seemingly unbeatable odds and not show a hint of fear, and yet hearing those words, it didn't make sense given what she had seen Izuku do. He doesn't want to say in case it ruins your friendship. He cares a lot about you and wouldn't want to hurt you. I never thought Izuku would like me like that. Who does this unless they like you? Ochako thought as she looked at the gâteau in her hand, which was proof of what she had believed for so long but never wanted to risk acting if it wasn't true. Izuku likes me. Uraraka told herself. A sense of warmth enveloped her, causing her to turn a shade of red, though this warmth wasn't enough to melt away the worry that was eating away at her heart. Thanks, Kirishima. Uraraka smiled and hugged her friend, who was surprised by the hug but did accept and return the favor. You're welcome. I'm so hungry. Kirishima stated on for his stomach to grumble and ruin the moment. Let's go back and see if those leftovers are done. Uraraka chirped as she and Kirishima made their way to the main hall, but there was one question that Ochako wished to ask. Do you think Izuku will be okay? Ochako sighed. Her heart felt as if it was being made of lead, weighing her down, which was evident in the weakness in her voice. Her eyes showed the fear she felt, like those of a rabbit in the headlights of a car. Kirishima paused for a second. He had seen the condition Izuku was in. He had seen the blood pouring from his eyes and mouth, but he knew Izuku had fought through terrible injuries to come back stronger. He'll get through it. I know he will. Kirishima stated code differently, before entering the main hall. 4 hours later and Izuku was released from surgery and placed into an induced coma to help with his healing. His breath was weak and his body, despite how well built, now looked weak, lying on a hospital bed with tubes and wires keeping his body alive. Bandages covered his body from head to toe, keeping his skin covered and reducing mobility, in the event he was to move or be moved. "How is he?" Toshinori asked Recovery Girl, who was there to check on the transfer. "He's got a long way to go. We had to put him into a coma to allow his body to heal, but he should be able to be woken within a week." "Will be fine when he wakes?" Toshinori asked, his voice showing his worry. "Not exactly," Recovery Girl grumbled, crossing her small arms. "What do you mean?" Toshinori looked to his friend, a worried look in his eyes. "It's more than the injuries that Izuku has sustained, it's how his body has been affected by the quirk used against him. I heard it was a transformation quirk. Aizawa found out that it caused the areas the attacker touched to become brittle. And that's the problem. My healing allows the wounds to heal, but until I learn more about this quirk I don't know how to reverse its effects. Right now, Izuku's skin and muscle tissue are closer to tissue paper, and his bones are not strong enough to support his own weight." "How long will this last?" Toshinori mumbled, crossing his fingers but keeping them out of view, hoping that his successor would be back to normal soon. "I'm not sure how long the effects of the quirks will last, but given the severity of Izuku's condition it may go on for a few months." Recovery Girl couldn't look her friend in the eyes as she spoke. "Damn it!" Toshinori hissed, smacking his side with his hand. As this happened, Recovery Girl noticed the worry in his eyes. "He's blaming himself. Despite his retirement he still acts like his old self. I admire this about him, but even he needs to remember that even he can't be everywhere at once." Recovery Girl told herself. She had seen how far her friend had pushed himself ever since he was wounded by All for One to the point of causing himself harm so long as he saved others, but now that his time as the #1 hero was at an end, he had to realize that he couldn't neglect himself. "Do you want a coffee?" Recovery Girl asked. "No, but thanks for asking," Toshinori mumbled, taking a seat beside his successor, who lay there, lifeless, with the only sound coming from him being his breath, which was shallow. So much so that the beeping of the machines that monitored his heart was outcompeting the sound of his breath. "Come on, young Midoriya, you have to fight," Toshinori thought as he looked to his successor stretching his hand out to support him, only to pull it away, as he saw the cracks on the surface of his hands. 2 days later in Izuku's hospital room, Toshinori, Aizawa and Recovery Girl were sitting around a table, coffees in hand. All of them showing signs of exhaustion. Toshinori had not left the hospital since the attack, refusing to sleep so he could keep an eye on Izuku. Recovery Girl had been forcing herself to use her quirk beyond her usual limitations, which was draining her stamina, and Aizawa had been monitoring his classes to make sure they were holding up after hearing the news. "So what do we know about the quirk used on Izuku and Kirishima?" Toshinori asked. "Luckily for us, your friend Tsukauchi managed to uncover some information on the man who attacked the boys." Aizawa revealed a file that had been sent to him by Tsukauchi. Opening it on showed Toshinori and Recovery Girl the image of the man. "The attacker's name is Moroi Akuma. He had been charged with 17 counts of murder and 25 counts of grievous bodily harm, but he had evaded the law for 15 years in part due to his connections." Aizawa read off the report, noting the key points. "Who was he connected to?" Toshinori asked. As the former symbol of peace, he had dealt with numerous villains no matter their ranking in the criminal hierarchy. From what has been gathered, Moroi was an enforcer for All for One. Not much is known as to his specific role in All for One's organization, but we do know he had been involved in rooting out potential threats and keeping the peace, and it seems that with All for One out of the picture in Tartarus, he had been hiding until his master's successor decided to call him in. Aizawa noticed the shocked look in Toshinori's eyes, his pupils even smaller than usual due to how wide his eyes were open. "And what of his quirk?" Recovery Girl sighed, taking a sip of coffee as she looked through the file. "Thanks to Kirishima, we know that his quirk weakens objects that making skin contact. We also know that the effect is enhanced by prolonged contact, both through repeated contact or through continuous contact. Do we know when it will wear off?" Toshinori flicked through the files, hoping to find a page on the attacker's quirk. "And that's where our information is limited. Most of the victims refused to speak out of fear of being harmed again. However, we do have 2 victims who recovered from his beatings. And Toshinryo looked to Aizawa, waiting for her to finish her response. The effects took 3 to 4 months and the other 6 months. Aizawa grumbled as Toshinori sat silently, taking everything in, looking to his successor who lay there motionless. How is he going to deal with? Izuku won't be able to train, and if we get attacked he can't fight back, and you know how difficult it is to stop him. Look at what he did at the sports festival. Recovery Girl looked to Izuku. She had seen just how stubborn he was, pushing his body to the limits even if it risked him permanent damage. And the attack at the summer camp, Toshinryo mumbled. I've spoken to Nezu, who has organized for Izuku to be given physical exemptions until he can get back to normal, but I think we need to keep him involved in some capacity. Cutting him out will do more harm than good. Nezu has also decided to keep Izuku on campus. It would be too risky to have him move back if he is to be targeted again, and the school can provide support for him. Agreed. What about Izuku's friends? Toshinori asked. He knew how much they cared for Izuku and hoped they were holding up. I've told them that I will let them know when they can arrive. I don't want to cause a panic if they see him in his current state. They have taken it better than I had expected, although, when they found out they were on the verge of tearing the dorm apart to GT Izuku everything they think he needed. Aizawa stated, his voice weaker than usual, showing his worry. While he claimed impartiality and acted in such a way to discourage this behavior, as he was a teacher who had to act fairly, he was still human. He saw the tenacity, the passion and the bravery that his class had shown through their short time at UA, and even he had to be proud of them. Each of the class had their own strengths which Aizawa knew would grow with time, and it was his job to nurture these strengths but also minimize their weaknesses, and out of all the students the one who caused him the greatest trouble as a teacher had to be Izuku Midoriya. The quirk was not commonly seen, and its backlash was something that he had never seen in his time as both a student and teacher at UA. However, he saw that Izuku despite this was special even among his peers. He had a drive, a will that would not break but bend, molding itself to allow him to keep going. When he broke his arms and legs, he molded his quirk to reduce the damage he did to himself. When he could not use it at full strength, he molded himself so he could use the power at a lower level, and most impressively, when his arms became ineffective, he trained his legs to compensate. I know how tough Izuku is. He's already proven how far he can push himself, and with his current handicaps he will come back stronger than before. I couldn't imagine him doing anything else. Aizawa stated, taking his coffee in hand as he leaned back in his chair and took a drink. He's some kid. Toshinori sighed, only for a weak voice to join in. Where am I? Izuku? Aizawa jumped to his feet and rushed to Izuku's side, shocked to hear his voice. Young Midoriya. How are you feeling? Toshinori asked, his voice a mix of relief and worry. I'm really tired. Izuku's eyes slowly closed only to open again after a brief respite. This isn't right. You should be in a coma, Izuku. We had to induce you. Recover Girl mumbled, only to start scanning Izuku over, checking his vitals. She had never heard of someone waking from an induced coma, especially someone who had been so severely injured. Induce me? Wait, where's Kirishima? Is he okay? We were fighting. Izuku looked around, trying to sit up on the bed to check the room, but his body refused to move. It's all right, Izuku. Kirishima is fine. We apprehended the criminal who attacked you both, Aizawa stated calmly, reassuring his student, knowing all too well the wired look Izuku was demonstrating. I remember kicking the villain, then I black out. Wait, why am I covered in bandages? Izuku looked down at his arms and saw that from the tips of his fingers to his upper shoulder were covered in thick gauze, restraining him from moving his hands and arms. And as he scanned himself further, he saw the bandages covering his chest and felt them around his neck. Take it easy. We don't want to cause your body any more trauma, Toshinori stated sternly, raising his hands, trying to motion Izuku to relax. Trauma? What's happened to me? Izuku asked. He would have yelped in worry, but he lacked the energy to do so. He clearly can't feel anything. The pain medication must have numbed the pain. Toshinori thought he knew how seriously injured Izuku had been, and seeing him move as he did could only be explained through the use of powerful painkillers. You see, Midoriya, the villain you fought used his quirk on you, Recovery Girl explained. Yeah, he said it was a fragility quirk, Izuku replied. Yes. It has caused your body to become progressively more fragile. It has affected your skin muscles and bones. Izuku lay there silently, looked at his arms, moving his head slowly from left to right, as Recovery Girl explained what had happened to his body. Your body has become so fragile that you can't walk, you can't fight, you can't sit in a seat without assistance, and you cannot activate your quirk, your body can't take the strain. But I can't sit around doing nothing, I have to train, to get better, how else could I be a hero? Can't I trying training maybe isometrics? Izuku worried cry turned to a weak whimper as he saw his dreams shatter before his eyes. I'm sorry but you can't Midoriya, it's too risky. Recovery Girl looked to Izuku and spoke softly, trying to be as careful as possible. We have already taken this into account Izuku. Nezu has exempted you from physical training till you're better and I think you should be able to go back to class within a week. I will however be exempting you from taking notes until I know for certain. As such I will be providing class notes to you on the topics we will be covering and I'll let the other teachers know so they can do the same. But. Izuku stuttered trying to formulate a sentence but the words wouldn't come. No buts Izuku. I know how difficult it must be for you, especially given how far you've come, but I cannot as your teacher put you at risk of causing yourself serious harm. And please let us help you, this is something you can't go through alone. Izuku lay there silently, tears welling up in his eyes. I'll let your classmates know you're awake. Do you want them to come and visit today? Aizawa asked as he got his phone from his pocket. No. Can I have some time to myself? Izuku mumbled. Aizawa and Toshinori bowed their heads and left the room. I'll let your mother know that you're awake, Toshinori whispered, putting his hand in his pocket to retrieve his phone. Okay. Just press the alarm if you need anything. Ryosuri Girl gave Izuku a small smile as she spoke before leaving the room. As soon as she left, Izuku burst into tears, which was unable to wipe away. The tears irritated his skin, causing it to peel and crack further. I'm worthless. Izuku wept, not caring that the door was open as his mentor and his teacher stood within earshot of his cries. 1 week later, and Izuku finally gave the go-ahead for his friends to visit him. He had refused day after day, not wanting them to worry as he felt he had done after the summer camp attack. But as luck would have it, his approval coincided with some positive news. The doctors had found that Izuku's body was becoming less brittle, but the process was slow. He couldn't walk or use his quirk, but he could move his limbs, allowing him to stretch and write for a short period of time, and his skin was now unlikely to crack from these movements. However, excessive movement or contact was still a risk. Despite this positive news, however, Izuku still wasn't in his usual mood. Even when his mother arrived, he tried to smile, but it wouldn't come. Now class, I know your first reaction will be to rush towards Izuku to give him a much-needed hug, but I implore you all to show restraint. His body is still under the effects of the villain's quirk, as such I expect everyone to take great care when you see Izuku, is that clear? Aizawa stated sternly, as he stood in the waiting room of the hospital, with the entirety of Class 1A standing in silence as he spoke except for Bakugo, who was nowhere to be seen. The class had spent the week preparing a class hamper, filled with gifts, food and activities that would help Izuku deal with the boredom of sitting in a hospital bed for days on end. Shota Aizawa, you and your class can see Izuku, I'll take you all to him and, please take care. Follow me. A nurse stated as she took the class to Izuku's room. The room was plain, nothing stood out in the pure white interior, besides was a few seats and a table. Toshinori was seated next to Izuku's bed on the left-hand side, a coffee in hand. His gaunt appearance made more apparent by the sagging of his shirt. Midoriya, hey man, Kirishima bellowed as soon as entered the room, barging past the rest of the class to see Izuku. Hey, Kirishima, Ikuku said weakly, forcing a weak smile. Hey, how you feel? Kirishima raised his hand ready to give his good friend a mighty handshake to show his support, only to hear a loud cough and a worried gasp come from the rest of the class while Toshinori sprung to his feet as if he was ready to rugby tackle Kirishima. Quote, Kirishima, I know your enthusiasm is warranted, but remember what I said. Aizawa sternly stated, his gaze like that of a statue, glaring into your soul. Oh sorry, sir, so how you feeling? Kirishima muttered apologetically, turning to Aizawa as he spoke to then suddenly turn to Izuku and smile in his distinctive toothy grin. I'm okay, really tired. What about you? Izuku yawned. No wonder given what we went through. Yeah man, I'm fine. Turns out my quirk made it harder for the villain to affect. From what I was told, my quirk neutralized his quirk's effect because I can increase the hardness of my body. That makes sense. Izuku slowly nodded as he did so. Ochako and Iida stood at either side of his hospital bed, followed closely by the rest of the class. It's good to see you, Izuku. I hope you're feeling okay, Akako asked, her eyes not focused on Izuku either out of worry or shyness. Izuku couldn't tell. I've felt better. I'm sorry for worrying you all. Izuku's eyes dropped from his friends to focus on his bedsheets. You don't need to apologize for anything. You and Kirishimiya had to fight to save your lives, Iida stated. I know, but Izuku tried to interject only to be interrupted by Mina. And it's not bad to worry about your friends. You should have seen us when we found out you were in the hospital. We went full panic mode. Which reminds me, we clubbed together to get you this. Denki lifted the care package, which was being held in a large wicker basket, with blue ribbons tied to the handle, and at the centerpiece of the care package was the star of the show. We clubbed together to get you lots of things, Midoriya. The melon was my idea, Mineta chirped in trying to take credit for the melon, only to get shoves and jabs from several classmates. You didn't need to, Izuku mumbled weakly, feeling tears well in his eyes causing them to sting. We care deeply for you, Midoriya. Your strength, passion and vigor are admirable and are inspiring to witness, and it wouldn't be right to not show you the same courtesy when you are in need of help, Tokiyami stated, with Dark Shadow deciding to make an appearance, giving Izuku a thumbs up. You guys, sorry, Izuku whimpered as he started crying, apologizing as he carefully wipes his eyes, the skin around his eyes bringing to become inflamed with contact from his tears due to small cracks that had formed around the eyelids. Momo produced a handkerchief to give Izuku to help wipe his eyes, but Aizawa slowly shook his head. His skin is too fragile to wipe his eyes with a simple cotton handkerchief. No wonder we were told to be careful when we arrived. If his skin is this easily damaged, we need to be as careful possible when he comes back to the dorms, Momo thought as she saw the Izuku grimacing due to the pain in his eyes before retracting the handkerchief. Sorry. Where's Kachan? Izuku sniffled, looking around the room to see the distinctive ash-blonde teen. We tried to convince him to come, but you know Bakugo, Kirishima stated, trying to make light of this, but he knew it wasn't enough. He's as stubborn as a mule, Iida grumbled, not caring for Bakugo's manner or approach, especially to his friend. And has the temperament of an angry chihuahua, Kaminanra added, with some in the class looking at him, either seeing it as a joke to lighten the mood or to perfectly describe Bakugo's behavior. A rather apt description, Tokiyami grumbled. Yeah, I guess so, Izuku whispered, his gaze again focused on his bed, his voice now far weaker than before, disheartened by the seeming lack of care his friend had for him. There was a pregnant silence, which was only broken when Recovery Girl entered the room, her syringe cane tapping on the ground. Oh, hello everyone, I hope you're all well, Recovery Girl chipped as she slowly made her way to Izuku's bedside. Hello Ryosuri Girl, the class replied, moving out of the way. Give Recovery Girl room to move. I see that you're keeping our Izuku company, that's good to see. I know it must be boring sitting in a hospital room with nothing much to do. Not really. All Might's been here to keep me company. He's been asking me to tell him stories from my golden age since he woke up, Toshinori joked. I wasn't that bad, was I? Izuku whimpered. Oh no, young Midoriya, Toshinryo replied, worried he had hurt Izuku's feelings. Ever since he met Izuku, Toshinori knew he was a fanboy ever since he read his hero guidebook on the fateful day they met. He had seen through their time together that Izuku had the traits and gifts that made him the perfect recipient for One for All, despite his lack of a quirk. He had a keen mind and a selfless attitude that pushed towards acts of heroism even if it was a risk to himself. He had seen his successor push through barriers that he had never imagined would arise, and with every barrier he broke, the stronger Izuku grew and the more heroic he became. Though the encounter with Glass had left Izuku in a state that would leave most people in a position to give up on their dreams, he knew Izuku would go beyond this limit and become stronger. He just needed help. I was just joking, Izuku. I didn't mind. In fact, it was quite fun, reminiscing on my golden years, Toshinori stated, noticing the sadness in Izuku's eyes, reminding him of the loss he saw in his successor's eyes when Bakugo had been captured by the League of Villains. Recovery Girl, Ochako chirped, as the recovery girl looked over the machines monitoring Izuku's vitals. Yes, Ochako, what is it? Recovery girl looked to Uraraka, with a small smile on her face. I was wondering, when will Izuku be allowed to leave? Uraraka asked in a sheepish tone. Well, Izuku's body is showing signs that the quirk is dissipating as he can move his body and do light tasks without much risk of harming himself, but we are still erring on the side of caution as we are still trying to figure out a way to reverse the effects of the quirks. Quote, why not ask Eri? Aizawa told us her quirk could reverse quirks when she arrived on campus in case she activated it. Why not use her quirk to heal Izuku? Todoriki stated in his usual monotone voice. We thought about it, but she still lacks control over her quirk, which could result in Izuku being unnecessarily harmed. On top of that, Eri could hurt many more if we aren't careful. It would be best to let the quirk dissipate with time, Aizawa stated, resulting in an audible groan coming from the class. I am hopeful that Izuku will be able to leave in a week. His body is showing signs of the quirk weakening, but we'll just have to wait and see. Recovery girl chirped, trying to return the room to a more cheery atmosphere. Well, that isn't too long. Fingers crossed that it's a week, Mina beamed, raising her hand and crossing her fingers. This soon resulted in the rest of the class following suit, with Shoji taking this to the extreme, by producing a number of hands and crossing their fingers. With this sight in front of him, Izuku smiled with no attempt to force it. This was as pure a smile as he could muster. Ever since he found out he was quirkless, he had never had any friends, other than Kachon, and even that friendship was far from what he wished it to be. He had been alone with only his mother to support him, but since he got one for all, his life had been turned around. He had friends who cared for him, he was being trained by his idol, and most importantly he had a quirk that allowed him to be a hero. I'm so lucky, Izuku mumbled to himself, catching the ever-vigilant ears of Iida. What did you say, Izuku? Iida asked, the class looking to Izuku, who was starting to blush and get flustered. Oh, it was nothing. Come on, Midoriya, you can trust us. Kirishima smiled. Izuku looked around the class, noticing the smiling faces of his friends before speaking. I was telling myself that I am so lucky. I didn't have many friends when I was at school because people thought I was quirkless. Turns out I was a late bloomer. I was so lonely before I came to UA until I met you all. You've all been so kind and friendly. I couldn't have asked for a better group of friends. Izuku sighed, resulting in a multitude of emotions from the class, from the surprised gaze of Momo and Iida at the thought of Izuku being lonely, to the grin of Kaminaria and Shiro, who were happy to have made Izuku's time at UA easier. Oh Izuku, you cutie. If you were fine right now, I'd be giving you a big hug. Mina bellowed, hugging herself as she spoke, with Mineta looking back and forth between her and Izuku, a look of envy on his face. It's the least we could do for such a good friend, Iida stated, almost placing his hand on Izuku's shoulder before pulling it back before he made contact. Thanks, yous guys, Izuku stated as the class circled around his bed and continued to chat amongst themselves, returning for a while to normality. All of them hoping Izuku would be out soon. As soon as a week passed and after a few after-class visits, Izuku was informed by the doctors that he would be able to return to dorms, so long as he was able to keep away from strenuous movements and unnecessary quirk usage. Izuku's body was still very fragile, but his skin had shown signs of returning to normal, but his bones, muscles and ligaments were still too fragile to risk trying to walk or lift himself. At best he would be able to return to class to participate in non-active basis in class exercises, and he would be able to turn in his bed and move around to allow someone else to move him. However, a certain support course student had heard of Izuku's condition through the grapevine and had informed Aizawa that she had modified a hospital wheelchair to make it more comfortable for Izuku to be sitting in, which had been sent to the hospital once Aizawa had had it cleared for use by UA. How are you feeling, kid? Aizawa asked as he entered Izuku's room, pushing the wheelchair in, and as he caught sight of the green-haired problem child, his sense of worry died down as he noticed Izuku was looking a bit brighter. His cheeks had a little bit of color, and though his eyes had small bags under them, he looked as if he had managed to get at least a few good nights of sleep, and to top it off he was sitting up unaided. I'm okay, sir. Is that a wheelchair? Izuku asked as he turned to allow his legs to hang over the left-hand side of the hospital bed. only to be caught off guard by the wheelchair, not the fact that he was going to have to use one, but rather that it did not match those he had seen in use throughout the hospital. The seat and armrests seemed to have additional cushioning, the wheels had some sort of suspension or shock absorber attached, and even the handlebars used to push the chair seemed to have been reshaped and repositioned to make them more ergonomic. Yes, Mei Hatsume had modified the design to make it more ergonomic and comfortable, as you will using it until you get better. Aizawa explained. That was kind of her. I'll have to thank her when I see her. Izuku mumbled to himself. As Aizawa set up the wheelchair, Recovery Girl and Toshinori Yagi entered the room. "Hey young Midoriya, you're looking well," Toshinori stated, with a big smile on his face. "Hey All Might, I don't feel too bad today. Have you seen the wheelchair Mei Hatsume made?" Izuku pointed to the wheelchair. "No. Whoa, that's really well done. I couldn't expect anything less from a fine support course student." Toshinori inspected the chair. Despite having no background in engineering, he had spent enough time around his old fried David Shields to know what a well-designed piece of equipment looked like. "Well Izuku, I was just coming to inform you that you are ready to head back to the dorms. I'll call for the nursing staff to help you into your chair," Recovery Girl stated, handing Izuku a piece of paper, which noted his departure, before heading to press one of the nurse alert buttons, only to be stopped by Aizawa. "That won't be necessary, I'll place him into the wheelchair." "Are you sure?" Recovery Girl asked, crossing her small arms. "Yes. In the event I have to do this, outside of the hospital, it would be best for me to at least attempt to do so, in a safe environment," Aizawa stated as he walked over to Izuku prepared to pick him up. "I could give it a go. See, still got, it," Toshinori stated, activating his buff mode, flexing his muscles only for a puff of white smoke to appear, returning the former number 1 hero back to his weakened state, resulting in a harsh bloody cough. "Take it easy, you're not getting any younger, Toshinori," Recovery Girl worriedly stated, walking over to her friend giving him a pat on the back. "Are you okay with me lifting you, Izuku?" Yes sir," Izuku sheepishly mumbled, as he gave his teacher a nod. "Okay. Just put your legs back onto the bed," Aizawa asked, and Izuku obliged, allowing Aizawa to scoop Izuku into his arms, lifting him gently up from the bed and placing him into the wheelchair. As he did this he noticed Izuku was wincing. "I'm sorry if I caused you any pain Midoriya, I will try and be more gentle next time." Aizawa knelt in front of Izuku. "It's okay sir, it wasn't as bad as I was expecting." Izuku sighed, surprised to see concern in his usually emotionless teacher. Aizawa stood up from his kneeling position and walked to the back of Izuku's wheelchair and grabbed the handles to turn Izuku to leave the room, with Toshinori following suit. "So young Midoriya, are you looking forward to going back to the dorms?" "Yeah, I've missed being with everyone and I can't wait to get back to work." "I couldn't expect anything less from you Izuku." Toshinori chuckled, glad to hear the excitement in Izuku's voice, which had been missing since he had woken. "Just remember you have to take it easy, I don't want you rushing the process and getting hurt, alright?" Aizawa stated sternly, in his no-nonsense tone. He had seen Izuku cause himself great pain and injury in the past, and under normal circumstances, he would encourage Izuku to try a new method to get around those flaws. However, this was not a normal situation. "Yes sir." Izuku's head dropped a little at Aizawa's statement, which Aizawa noticed, and realizing he may have come off as too blunt, he decided to open up a bit. "I know it's tough kid, it's in your nature to push past your physical limits to get better, and it is truly an admirable quality, but you are also in a position where your physical limits for the moment are something you cannot push too far, lest you end up in a worse position, so I want you to try your best to slow down to allow your body to heal before you decide to test yourself." Izuku, Aizawa and Toshinori entered a UA coach which had been adapted to allow wheelchair access and made their way to the dorms. 40 minutes later and Izuku, Aizawa and Toshinori arrive at the Class 1A's dorm and stood for a second taking in the familiar sight before entering the dorm. "What am I going to say? You mean it's been a while since you've been in? I hope everyone hasn't been too stressed out sabi out the incident, and I hope no one's looked through my stuff. I already get NOGUH for all the All Might stuff I have on display and not the stuff I have kept under my bed." He looks nervous, Aizawa thought. Thanks to his form of hero work, he had to be observant of physical clues and tells which could give away a person's intentions and actions, which were on full display as he noticed the tension in Izuku's shoulders, the instinctive rubbing of his thumbs and fingers, and the fact that he was muttering quietly to himself, which was enough for Toshinori to kneel beside his successor. "It's all right to be a little nervous, young Midoriya, especially with what you've been through, but remember, you don't have to go through it alone. You have us all to help you. Besides, you must be missing your friends." I am," Izuku stuttered, while he was happy to hear those words from his mentor and friend. As soon as he had time to let those words sink in, they only led Izuku back to the same problem. "So are you ready to go in?" Aizawa stated, softly. "Yes, sir." Izuku nodded, resulting in the group entering the dorm. They were silent, likely to give Izuku time to think over what he was going to expect, but that wasn't what Izuku was thinking about. Instead, an all-too-familiar quote resurfaced, which highlighted Izuku's current state. Defenseless Izuku, however, the time he had spent mulling over this thought came to an abrupt end once the door to the dorm main room opened as the three-man crew were met with an almighty cry. "Welcome home, Izuku." The room was covered in bunting and balloons, which were covered in miniature All Mights, all dressed in the costumes of his varying ages, as part of their design. There was the smell of freshly baked cakes and other party foods which brought a homely feeling to the door. The entire class were wearing All Might party hats and were blowing party blowers. Even Bakugo, who was scowling, had a party blower in his mouth and a squinty party hat on his head, although there was some concern that he might explode Izuku if he gets too close, so the duo of Shiro and Kaminari was keeping a close eye on him. "What's this?" Izuku gasped as he looked around the room and took in the comforting smell of freshly baked party food and cakes as he was wheeled into the center of the room, resulting in the class encircling the group. Toshinori grinned as he saw the tension melt away from his successor, and Aizawa, the usually stoic and stone-faced hero, had a glimmer in his eyes and was trying his best to contain his smile, leaving him with a slightly upturned lip. "Ha ha ha. I see that you're in awe at this mighty display." Iida heartily laughed as he approached Izuku, his hands so five wide, both to show off the scale of the work and to show he was happy to see his best friend back home, although he was holding back the urge to give his friend a much-needed hug. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything, just relax and enjoy," Uraraka chirped as she slipped into Aizawa's spot and pushed Izuku to the table, where he was met with warm smiles and comforting remarks. "It's good to see you, Izuku. I've just prepared some katsudon. If you'd like some." Iida and Uraraka told me it was your favorite, so I've tried my best to make it just the way you like it. There's also a selection of chiffon cakes in the oven once we've had something to eat. And please help yourself to the rest of the foods. "Thank you, Sato. I can believe you made all this, too," Izuku stated, only to be interrupted by Kaminari, who leaned on Sato and crossed his arms as he spoke. He had some helpers working alongside him. "Yes, magical helpers, ha ha ha." Mina chuckled, waving her hands into the air, as if she was casting a spell before she wrapped her arms around Sato and Kaminari, who also started laughing, resulting in Izuku laughing as well. It's good to see him laugh, Mina thought. She had seen Izuku in the hospital, and once she learned of how serious his condition was, she could only imagine how difficult things must be for Izuku, and she saw it as her duty to do anything that could help Izuku's life be easier, even if it was as small as making him smile, or laugh, as a kind act, however small, can brighten someone's day. Meanwhile, at the center of the dorm main room, Kirishimiya walked up to Aizawa, who was looking at the time on his watch. "You're welcome to stay, sir. We have more than enough food and party games." "Thanks for offering, but unfortunately I'm busy. All Might asked me to help him with a presentation he has to organize, meaning he's likely left it to the last minute and will need me to start it for him." Aizawa looked to the former number one hero and glared at him, resulting in Toshinori rubbing his neck out of embarrassment. "Yeah, I have no computer skills whatsoever, and I tried to make the PowerPoint 2 weeks ago." "And how did it go?" Kirishima asked, only for Aizawa to answer that question. He had a half-baked first slide which was on the verge of becoming intelligible. "Come on, Aizawa, it wasn't that bad." Toshinori tried to downplay the issue, using his hands as if he was trying to hush Aizawa. His plan, however, sunk like a lead balloon. "I thought it was an attempt to pass on a secret message or create a new language, I was stuck on which option to choose. Aizawa looked to Toshinori with his trademark dead-eyed stare which made Toshinori squirm and Kirishimiya chuckle. I also have to see Eri once. I've fished with Toshinor's slides. Her horn seems to be growing and the staff at the hospital are worried she may have another release, so I'm on night duty. We'll have to get going but thank you for offering, Aizawa explained, rubbing his tired eyes, as he then checked his watch again. All right, sir, if you're able to get some free time you are always welcome to come. We have more than enough food and party games if you are interested. Kirishimiya raised his arms into the air as he walked away from Aizawa. Thanks, if anything happens just phone. All right. Aizawa pointed a finger at Kirishimiya, hammering this point down before he left. We will. Kirishima nodded as he went over to join the group around Midoriya, with Bakugo being the only one standing away from the group, not caring for the festivities. See you tomorrow, Izuku. And hope you have a good time, Toshinori called as he waved to his successor, who waved back, like a proud father waving to his son, as a wave of red covering Izuku's cheeks, while Aizawa looked to Toshinori and facepalmed as he left the dorm. This reaction, along with the statement and facepalm of Aizawa and Toshinori, was met by a mix of laughs and supporting words before the party continued uninterrupted. The welcome home party went down a hit, and it was all thanks to the planning of Momo, Iida and Uraraka, as they had planned a number of activities, all of which allowed Izuku to join in with minimum risk to his body. They did a quiz, with the prize being a stack of freshly baked muffins and cookies made by Sato. There was even a karaoke machine which became the center of attention, with Mina and Hadakare peer pressuring Jiro into singing every decent song, while also laughing at Mineta for his appalling vocals. Even Bakugo, who usually avoided activities like this, joined in when the activities, although his usually rough persona and explosive personality, almost resulted in a table being turned to ash when he opposed a judge's decision in the quiz. After the festivities were over, Class 1A cleaned the dorm, leaving the banners and balloons up, and prepared for bed. As they did this, Iida, Uraraka, Momo and Tokiyami sat in the living room deciding who would watch Izuku. Aizawa had proposed the idea to the class a few days before Izuku was released and had left it to the class to decide how they wished to organize it. Iida led the way and proposed a framework. The class would rotate weekly, in which 4 classmates would decide among themselves who would watch Izuku on that night. So who is going to keep an eye on Izuku tonight? Iida asked as the small group gave their cases, while Izuku was in one of the ground floor bathrooms getting prepped for bed with the help of Sue. I'm awake through most of the night due to dark shadow. I'm more than able to watch over Midoriya. I can watch over him as well. If he's in distress I can provide basic first aid if it is required. I'll do it, Ochako stated, raising her hand. You sure? I know with the party you've been very busy. I'll be fine. Besides, my quirk would be the best if we need to move Izuku. Ochako waved off Iida's concern. I don't see a problem with Uraraka working tonight. What about you, Momo? Tokiyami turned to speak to the creation hero, who ran her hand through her hair. If everyone else is fine then I don't mind. Remember, if you need us, just knock. Momo smiled, placing a hand on Uraraka's shoulder, result equals ing in Uraraka smiling back and nodding. All right, if that's settled then let head off. I'll see you all in the morning, Iida stated, only to yawn mid-sentence. Night, guys. Uraraka waved her friends off before heading to the bathroom where Izuku was getting changed. Deku, you okay? Do you need any help? Uraraka KN coked on the door. No, I'm fine. Izuku worriedly yelped, pushing the door open, reassuring Uraraka. Oh okay. Let's head to bed. Uraraka paused mid-sentence, after noticing Izuku had not fully pulled his pajama top down, revealing his well-developed abs, but also a line of scars and cracked skin, where Izuku been operated on only a few days ago. Everything all right? You look worried. Izuku whispered as he fixed his top, not realizing Uraraka had seen his scars. Yeah, I'm fine, just a little tired. Uraraka yelped, trying to hide her worry, and by waving her hands in front of her at great speed before walked behind Izuku's wheelchair, taking hold of the handlebars and pushed Izuku towards the lift. A few minutes later the pair arrived at Izuku's floor and entered Izuku's room. The room had been extended just enough to allow a second single mattress bed into the room, as well as an ensuite. In keeping with Izuku's original theme, the room was plastered in All Might memorabilia, from posters and pictures to small action figures and bobbleheads, with the beds having duvets which were inspired on All Might's costumes based upon the ages of his career, with Izuku's bed being based on the design and colors of All Might's Golden Age costume, while the second bed's duvet was based on his Bronze Age costume. Uraraka parked the wheelchair right next to Izuku's bed, and when Izuku tried to lift himself off, Uraraka yelped, "Slow down, Izuku, let me help you." Uraraka lightly tapped Izuku's shoulder, activating her quirk, and held his shoulders, allowing his body to slowly rise into the air as he was moved over his bed. "Release," Uraraka whispered as she placed Izuku as close as she could to his mattress before deactivating her quirk. "Thanks, Uraraka-san. I'm sorry for being such a bother," Izuku mumbled. "You no bother, Deku. You need help and it's the least I can do to help my friend." Pound Uraraka smiled, helping lift Izuku's mood, getting a small smile from him. This moment went on just long enough to become awkward between the pair. "So let's get to sleep. We don't want Aizawa to come and check on us." "Yeah, that would be awkward, haha." Uraraka chuckled as she started to blush, throwing her bedsheets over her as she got comfortable in bed. Meanwhile Izuku slowly shuffled and moved his sheets over him, being careful to move them just enough to get comfortable without aggravating or damaging his skin. Izuku. "Yes, Uraraka-san, what is it?" "Come on, Uraraka, you need to tell him. You need to go beyond. It's nothing." "Good night, Deku," Uraraka stuttered, fidgeting with her fingers before turning around and faking her attempt to get to sleep.
"Okay. Good night, Uraraka-san." Izuku yawned as he tried to relax, closing his eyes and making a careful attempt to roll over. "Good night," Uraraka replied, hitting herself on the thigh for not having the courage, and it seemed that her opportunity to speak to Izuku was over. However, tonight would not be a restful experience.
"I need to go, but I can't get up," Izuku thought as he felt himself wake up. He had before bed taken a good amount of water due to the myriad of health benefits it had. Unfortunately, this action was the cause of his current predicament. Izuku slowly turned to see Uraraka, who was lying in bed, facing the wall, her breathing soft and quiet. "I can't wake her up. That wouldn't be fair on Uraraka, waking her up because I need to pee." After the attack, Nezu commissioned the building of an ensuite in Izuku's room, which would save him time and energy, should he ever require those facilities. It wasn't anything too extravagant, but more than enough to deal with most personal matters. Izuku scanned the room, in the darkness, looking for something he could use to allow him to get to the toilet, and after a while Izuku managed to catch a glimpse of his wheelchair thanks to a small amount of moonlight peeking through a gap in the curtains covering his window. However, this turned out to be a non-viable. "No, that won't work. It will be too loud and it'll wake Uraraka. I'll have to walk, but I don't have any crutches to support my body. If shuffle over to the edge of the bed, I can swing my legs over the bottom of the bed and prop myself against the wall. That should work." Izuku analyzing the situation as he walked himself through his plan, just as he would if he was dealing with a villain attack or natural disaster. "Come on, Izuku, you can do this," Izuku mumbled as carefully shuffled down his bed, making sure to not make any groans or hisses as he moved, as his skin on the back of his legs was beginning to crack. "Okay. Now I need to swing my legs and try to stand." Izuku panted as he placed his feet onto the ground. His body was nowhere near the level of fitness he had before the attack, and what made his fatigue worse was the constant mental strain of trying to move every muscle and limb just enough to move without causing himself a significant injury.
3, 2, 1. Izuku thought as he tried to stand, only for him to move at a snail's pace, with the all too distinctive cracking sound with every movement. "Damn it. I'm so useless. I can't even stand up," as this was going on. A certain gravity hero was woken from her slumber by a loud cracking noise. "What is that noise?" Uraraka thought as she tried to figure out where the sound was coming, only for Izuku to make that answer clear.
"Damn it, Izuku, what is he doing?" Uraraka thought as she turned around in her bed, and slowly closed her tired eyes, catching sight of Izuku, attempting to push himself off the bed, his hands resting on the bottom of the bed frame, his arms and legs shaking as he attempted to stand. He was covered in sweat and his face was grimaced, in a mix of exhaustion and pain. "Damn it,
Come on Izuku, stand up. Izuku, what's wrong? Uraraka asked, rubbing her eyes as she let her eyes adjust to the darkness.
Uraraka, what are you doing? You should get back to sleep. Izuku yelped, only to hiss as he lost in focus on his movement, resulting in his arms giving way as he fell back onto the bed. Izuku, are you alright? Uraraka rushed to Izuku, preparing to activate her quirk should he be injured from the fall onto his bed. I'm fine, Izuku panted, his body shaking due to the exhausting process of trying to stand in his current state. Phew, now what were you doing? Remember recovery girl said you can't stand yet, your bones aren't strong enough yet.
I know, it's just… God, this is embarrassing. Izuku huffed as he put his hand over his face, trying to hide his embarrassment. What is it? Uraraka asked, clear worry marking her voice. I was trying to get to the toilet, Izuku mumbled.
Oh okay, let get you there. Uraraka stuttered as she started to blush, though it wasn't enough to be seen in the night, and given how important this was, Uraraka took a deep breath and gave her head a shake, to try and make Izuku feel comfortable given how personal this issue was. Thanks. Izuku mumbled as Uraraka lightly tapped his shoulder and moved Izuku to the bathroom, pushing his weightless body with as little force as possible, with her actions being closer to her guiding Izuku's own movements. Once he got to the bathroom, he used the weightlessness to his advantage, using it to allow him to move into the bathroom without assistance, as he then closed the door and deal with his business.
Why wouldn't he ask me? I mean, I know it must be embarrassing, and I know it must be awkward with me being a girl, but still, he knows I wouldn't mind if it helped him out. Uraraka thought as she lay back on a wall in the room with her worry rising as she mulled over her thought. Around 5 minutes later, Izuku opened the door, holding on to the door handle to stop himself from floating away, allowing Uraraka to carefully hold him and direct him back to his bed. I'm sorry, Izuku mumbled, as he was placed on the bed. For what, Izuku? Uraraka asked, her voice soft and quiet, as she placed her fingers together. Once Izuku was successfully released, Uraraka noticed his eyes were starting to tear up. For waking you. You don't need to apologize for that. Besides, it wasn't a problem, Izuku. Remember, I promised to help you any way that I could, and as a hero in training and as your friend, I would do anything to help you. Uraraka stated, reassuringly smiling as she spoke, attempting to make Izuku feel more comfortable, but it only seemed to make Izuku feel worse. I know, but I feel so helpless, so useless. Izuku sighed, his lip quivering as he tried his best to not cry. No, you not Deku. I'm just a liability. I can't even walk to the bathroom without someone helping me. I'm holding everyone back, like I did when I was younger. I shouldn't have come back. Izuku's anger at himself turned to sorrow as he started crying. His frustration at himself had reached a breaking point, and Uraraka could only sit there and try her best to calm him. You're not a liability, and you'll never be a liability. You maybe be limited right now, but you will come back better than before. Besides, you're more than just your quirk. What does he mean by when he was younger? Izuku's has always been so helpful. Since when was he holding people back? Uraraka thought as she spoke to Izuku. Izuku looked to Uraraka, and her heart started to break as she saw this usually strong-willed and inspiring boy look so helpless and alone. And it is at a moment like this that Uraraka realized she had gone beyond and helped her friend. You still have your mind. I can't think of anyone in our class who can look at a situation or a quirk and create a plan as quickly as you can. I admire you for that. We all do. Uraraka-san. Also, I wanted to thank you for the cake you got me. Izuku was silent, his tear-filled eyes as wide as saucers at hearing those words.
The cake you got me was really nice. Hiroshima told me that you got it for me, as you were worried that you had offended me, and I know you must have wanted to keep this a secret between the two of you, but Hiroshima was scared that you might not get out of the hospital. I could tell by the worry in his eyes. Again Izuku was silent, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He wasn't sure if this was from worry or shock. I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression. It's just, I've never had anyone ask me something like that before, and when you did it, it caught me by surprise. You didn't do anything to offend me. Uraraka smiled softly, and as if he was broken from a spell, the worry melted away from Izuku's face.
There was a brief moment of silence as the pair looked at one another, which was only broken when Uraraka realized the time.
I think we might need to get to sleep, Izuku. We have classes tomorrow. Oh, yeah, Izuku yawned. Do you need anything? I can get you some water or... No, it's fine, though, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind. Izuku mumbled, again a feeling of embarrassment welling up. Yes, Uraraka looked curiously at Izuku. Sitting with me till I fall asleep, I know it's a lot but, Sure, I don't mind, Izuku, if it helps you get to sleep. Uraraka stood up as she spoke, allowing Izuku to get comfortable. Okay, Uraraka doesn't freak out, it's just Izuku, you know, the beau who you've had a crush on since the first exercise you had together, wanting you to stay close to him. Uraraka thought to herself as she slowly lowered herself to sit at the foot of Izuku's bed. Thanks, Uraraka-san. Good night, Izuku mumbled as he began to slowly drift off, taking a deep breath and a sigh of relief as Uraraka sat close to him. However, while Izuku was slowly drifting off, Uraraka as she sat there thought on what she had seen and heard tonight. What did Izuku mean when he said he was holding everyone back, like he did when he was younger and he was crying, due to how he's feeling about himself? Uraraka mumbled as she realized that she wouldn't be getting much sleep tonight, turning to look at her friend, and doing so caused her heart to ache with worry, keeping the tiredness she felt at bay.
At 7:30 a.m. Uraraka got up and made her way to the dorm kitchen to make herself a tea. She had not slept beyond a few instances where she nodded off for a few minutes only for her worry to shock her back to an awakened state. As she filled the kettle and got the milk and sugar she needed, she sat in silence waiting on the distinct sound of the kettle boiling, mulling over Izuku's condition, replaying the creaking of his bones and the cries he made as he let his emotions out.
She was broken from this trance-like state by the ping of the kettle, and she proceeded to make her tea. She liked it with milk and 3 sugars. Once her tea was made, she sat at the table and took a sip of her tea, only to hear the voice of the class president. Is everything all right, Uraraka? It's 7:40. You should be in bed sleeping. Iida asked, pointing to his watch. He was dressed in the same clothes as he had used during the entrance exam, and despite the early time his hair was well kept.
Yeah. I couldn't sleep. I should be saying the same for you, it's a bit early for you to be up. Uraraka rubbed her eyes as she spoke. Usually it is, but I've realized that I have in fact been wasting valuable training time by not rising earlier. As such, I have made it my mission to go for an early morning run, to start off my day and get the blood pumping before class. Iida stated in his usual overdramatic tone when issues of great importance were involved, reminding Uraraka of Iida's villain persona, causing her to chuckle. Sounds like a good idea. Thanks. You said you couldn't sleep. Was everything alright with Midoriya? Well, that depends, Uraraka mumbled, looking away from Iida. What do you mean by depends? Did he say something? Iida raised his brow and spoke in a confused tone. Oh no, it wasn't like that, it's just... Uraraka gestured for Iida to come over, only to whisper the last of her sentence. I don't think Deku's coping well mentally. Earl took a deep breath before speaking, and once she was finished Iida leaned back onto the kitchen worktop, taking a moment to think before speaking. It's understandable given how much he's gone through, but we've seen him go from so much pain in the past. What was Izuku doing that led to this? He had tried to walk because she didn't want to wake me to get to the bathroom. I woke up due to hearing his bones and joints cracking. Uraraka's voice trembled as she spoke, as she felt as if her chest was being pressed down, due to the worry. My God, Iida covered his mouth as he spoke. He knew that Izuku was prone to trying to push his body, even when he was severely injured to its limits, but hearing what Uraraka had said, made him realize that this was not normal. And that's not it. After I helped him he started crying like he did when he found out about Bakugo's capture, but he was saying he felt like he was useless and a liability like he had been when he was younger. Any ideas what he means, Iida? Uraraka explained, worry marking her voice as she resisted the urge to raise her tone of voice. Based on what you said, I think there may be some underlying issues that Izuku may have lying under the surface, and his current condition may be aggravating those feelings. Only way to find out is to ask him. Iida moved his hand from his mouth to his chin just as he was about to speak, his mind working overtime to uncover a possible cause for Izuku's actions. But it could be risky. I don't want to pressure Deku into speaking about something he isn't comfortable with. That true, Uraraka, but we need to find out. Maybe Bakugo might have some info. Izuku said he and Bakugo were friends at some point, so he may have some information worth discussing. Maybe. What about the rest of the class? Should I let them know? Uraraka asked, realizing that the class would want to try and help if they had heard what had happened last night. Not yet. Too many hands can make these issues complex. When we're in class, let them know that Izuku's struggling and we need to do more to help. Then once we have had some time to dig deeper, we can figure out our next move. Sounds like a plan. Uraraka nodded. Iida gave Uraraka a big thumbs up and a smile, before making his way to leave the kitchen area. Hope you have a good run, Iida. Uraraka waved Iida off. Thanks, Ochako, see you soon. Iida waved back, leaving Uraraka in the kitchen area. Looks like things are going to get a lot more complex, Uraraka thought as she turned to lift her mug and took a sip of her tea. At 9 a.m. the entire class was sitting in their seats waiting for their dry-eyed teacher to arrive. However, 2 seats were not filled. As part of Izuku's recovery and transition back to normal life, arrangements had been made to allow Izuku to come to class after 9 a.m., to account for difficulties that may arise from traveling in, and given that Izuku was in his wheelchair, he would need someone at this point to help him, and it was Ochako's job today, in part due to her taking on the night shift duty. Alright, everyone settles down. Now before Aizawa arrived, I'd like to discuss a matter with you all, Iida proclaimed, only to soften his tone once everyone had quietened down. Sure thing, class representative, what's the issue? Ojiro asked, his tail curling behind his chair as he spoke. It's regarding Midoriya. Iida's usual air of pride, which showed as he spoke, melted away to show his concern, as his voice was low and somber. Goddammit. That nerd's taking up valuable time, Bakugo snarled, crossing his arm and turning away from Iida to look out the window, his comment resulting in a collection of sour looks coming in his direction. As I was saying, while it's good that we have Izuku back, we must realize that things are not back to normal, and this can be difficult for everyone, especially Midoriya. As such, I think we have to make his transition to normality easier. What do you mean, Iida? Has something happened with Izuku? Jiro asked. To be frank, Jiro, Izuku is struggling with his condition. It's causing a strain on his mental health. I don't want to panic them with the full details from last night, but keeping them completely in the dark isn't right either. A mixed approach will do for now, Iida thought. Izuku's struggling. But he looked fine at the party, Mina mumbled, only to yelps. The rest of her response followed swiftly by Kaminari. Yeah, he was laughing and enjoying the party games. Maybe he was tired after all the partying? They say that those who are the most in pain or on the verge of depression are those who wish to eliminate those feelings in others. After such a serious incident, it may be that Izuku is, in fact, struggling mentally, Tokiyami stated in his serious tone, his thought-proving words plunging the room into silence. Tokiyami's right. Physical trauma can leave a mental scar, and as Izuku's friends, we have to do everything in our powers to help him, Shoto stated, in his monotone voice. He knew just how much mental baggage and scaring he had suffered at his father's hands and how it had taken him this long just to overcome the harm caused by his burn, and it was all thanks to Izuku. Despite the fact Izuku had both the sports festival and his reputation on the line. I'm with Shoto on this. Mental health is an area that is underestimated in how important it is, and if I can do anything to help Izuku with his mental health, I'd gladly do it, Momo proclaimed, putting her hand on her heart. Same here, it wouldn't be manly to leave a friend to deal with those issues alone. Izuku would do the same for us, Kirishima bellowed, with his usual enthusiasm, getting the rest of the class hyped. So what do you suggest we do to help Izuku? Ribbit, Sue asked, tilting her head. We'll try and make Izuku feel as involved as possible, and that goes beyond class. We have to find ways to allow him to help in day-to-day activities, whether it's cooking, cleaning or doing the laundry, no matter what we need to help Izuku. Idia raised his hand and listed off what was needed. Are quirks allowed? I mean, Izuku might need help with something and using our quirks could make that job easier. Hadakari asked. She had raised her hand earlier on in the conversation, but her quirk had made that a fruitless endeavor, so she raised her voice to be heard. Yes, although extreme caution will be required. Iida stated as he heard the sound of wheels creaking down the hallway floor with footsteps mixed in. That's Izuku coming. Everyone act normal. Iida pointed his finger and chopped the air with it, his voice carrying great authority as the class hushed down immediately, only for the sight of Izuku and Urakak entering the room, brought the class back to life. They had been talking to one another quietly before entering the class. Hey, Izuku. How you feeling? Kirishima proclaimed as Izuku was wheeled over to his desk, his backpack slung to the side of the wheelchair. I am good. Glad to be back actually, Izuku stated, smiling weakly, the thoughts from last night still in the back of his mind, though less prevalent. That's great. It's good to have you back, man, Kirishima exclaimed with a toothy grin. Yeah, ditto, it been strange not having you in class, Kaminaria added. You even have a bit more color in your cheeks, Minia stated, pointing at her cheek, before hopping out of her chair and over to Izuku, looking at his face closely, causing him to blush. She's so close, Izuku yelped internally as he started to sweat. What's wrong? You look flushed. Are you coming down with something? Mina asked as she then moved back from Izuku, this time deciding to take Bakugo's desk over to allow her to sit of Izuku. Hey! Give me back my desk, you raccoon-faced moron! Bakugo roared, his hands flashing with bright orange sparks, causing Izuku to flinch and strain himself, resulting in a twinge of pain as his skin was moved swiftly, not enough to cause him to hiss, but enough to cause him to grimace a little, which wasn't noticed by anyone, who were instead intently watching the Mina-Bakugo showdown. Calm down, you big grump. You aren't even using it right now, since you've been looking out that window since you're here, besides I'm only borrowing it. Mina fired back, before placing the table down and sitting on it, sticking her tongue out at Bakugo, who huffed and mumbled to himself. Damn it. As I was saying, are you okay? Mina returned her gaze to Izuku. Yeah, I don't know what came over me there. Izuku stuttered, trying to hide the pain he felt, which seemed to fool Mina. As long as you're feeling okay, then that's good, Minia stated softly, only for her to smile with a large cheerful grin, a genuine smile, shown by the happiness in her eyes. Thanks, Mina. Izuku's lip curled a little as he spoke. Also, don't forget that we're here in case you need anything. Mina was about to place her hand on Izuku's shoulder, to reinforce the point, but realizing the potential risks, she placed her hand on his desk, close to his hand instead. I won't. Izuku nodded his head and spoke softly, his response sending a sense of ease across the class, who after hearing Iida's concern were glad to see that Izuku opened to their help. As this happened, however, a loud set of footsteps could be heard. They were slow and trudging, and only one teacher fit that description when he wanted to be heard. That Aizawa coming! Kaminari cried, as the class immediately locked themselves into position. Oh geez! Mina yelped, as she used her agile movements to move back into her seat, only to fix her hair just as Aizawa arrived. Good morning, class. Bakugo, if it is at all possible, can you return your desk to its proper location, as this is a school and not a pigsty? Aizawa turned his glare to Bakugo, who instead of bending under his teacher's infamous glare, decided to fire back, as it was his nature, to fight rather than submit. What? But I wasn't me. I don't care. Move it back. Aizawa's quirk activated, his eyes glowing blood red, and his air floating in the air, giving off the impression of a demon, which uneased even the toughest of constitutions. Fine, Bakugo grumbled as he moved the desk back in front of his chair. As this happened, a few snickers could just be heard, and the offenders were rather obvious. Now that is out of the way, I would like to say that it's good to have you back, Izuku. The class has been lost without you, and I know you have some moments of great difficulty, but as we have all come to expect, you have what it takes to overcome those difficulties, Aizawa stated, with surprising warmth in his voice, bring a small smile to Izuku's face, and a myriad of reactions from the class, from the typical snarl of Bakugo to the shocked slack jaw of Kaminari, who did not expect to hear such words come from his homeroom teacher, who was renowned from his cold demeanor. Sir, you do have a heart, Mina proclaimed, with an air of wonder and surprise in her voice, as she cupped her hands and placed them on her chest. Unfortunately, this state of warmth from the eraser hero would not last long. However, that does not mean I will go easy on you, as while your body may not be up to training, your mind is something that can always be worked on, and that goes for all of you. And he's lost it, Kaminari mumbled, followed by Shiro, Sato and a few other class members who were enjoying the change of pace. I heard that. Now, that we have that out of the way, let's get down to business, as today we will be going over the regulations and standards relating to the use, creation and enforcement of hero costumes and support gear. Aizawa stated. His usually emotionless face slowly produced a toothy grin, which sent a sense of unease across the class, who last saw this look when he lied about the expulsion for their quirk test. I can't deal with this. Kaminari banged his head off the desk. And who better to discuss this matter than someone who is responsible for at least 5 pieces of hero legislation, and is mentioned in almost all textbooks on the topic. Aizawa stated, only for the sound of footsteps from the hallway caused him to quieten down, followed by an all too familiar, sultry tone. And is still in the top 3 for the most scandalous and controversial heroes today. No way, it's Midnight. Mineta yelped with glee, as Midnight made her appearance, in her usual skin-tight and easily rippable bodysuit. Her hands were behind her head, as she slowly entered the room, swaying her hips, and walking with just enough presence to show off her numerous assets, while giving off an air of unrivaled self-confidence. I will be leaving you all in Midnight's capable hands. Yes, now I can focus. Then again, I don't know if I'll be taking in what she says in, but who cares, cause it's Midnight. Kaminair thought, uppercutting the air under his table as to not draw any attention to himself. Now class. Today I want you all to be on your best behavior, as while I enjoy dishing out my unique forms of punishment, this lesson is of the utmost importance, as such I expect you all to listen and follow my commands without question. Midnight stood behind Aizawa's desk as she spoke. I'd do whatever she says if you know what I mean. Mineta chuckled, leaning back as he spoke to catch the ears of Shiro and Kaminari, who sniggered and gave him a thumbs up. I will make an exception for you, Izuku Midoriya. However, that does not mean I have other ways to encourage or discipline you, isn't that right, Izuku? Midnight walked slowly to Izuku and leaned on his desk and spoke, in a calm and sultry manner, all the while Izuku couldn't look her in the eyes and muttered. Yes ma'am. There's a good boy. Midnight whispered into Izuku's ear, before heading back to her desk, resulting in a few of the boys giving Izuku a jealous stare down and Uraraka, all the while Izuku had something else on his mind. What did she mean by other ways to encourage or discipline me? I hope it isn't anything too harsh. Midnight, please show a little restraint. My pupils are still to some extent innocent, and I would like to preserve that for as long as possible. Besides, I think a few class members may find your methods a little extreme. Aizawa stated coldly as he made his way to leave the classroom. I'm only teasing, Midnight's pouted, placing her hands behind her back to make herself look innocent. Only to turn back to face the class and gave them a sneaky wink, and from there, the lesson started, and though it was far more enjoyable than everyone had expected, their focus wasn't full on Midnight lessons or innuendo-laden jokes and references. Instead, every now and then every member of the class besides Bakugo took a moment to look at Izuku, who was enjoying the opportunity to show his knowledge of hero costumes and support items. All the while, 2 questions were into the minds of Izuku's classmates as they watched him. 2 weeks later, and Izuku's condition was continuing to improve. His last checkup had shown that the fragility of his bones, muscles, ligaments and skin were now within an acceptable range to allow Izuku to try walking. However, this was to be limited to supervised moments such as within the dorms or during class times. Other than that, he was to use the wheelchair to move around. Also, despite the fact he was allowed to walk, he was unable to do this unaided, due to the lack of activity he had since the accident had resulted in muscular deterioration, which could lead to him falling or collapsing under his weight. As such, he was provided a special pair of titanium Cooper's elbow crutches, which had been designed and created by Momo, who during her free time had looked at numerous designs in order for her to create a form that was built specifically to Izuku's measurements, with a little help from Mei Hatsume, who not only offered suggestions on the material in use but also Izuku's measurements to allow a more custom-fitted design, which she had required from having intimate contact with Izuku, despite the fact she was completely oblivious to the awkwardness her measurements had caused. And today was the day that Izuku tried them out. Good morning, Izuku. How are you? Oh, good morning, Momo. Well, thanks. What about you? I'm good as well, Izuku, looking forward to the day ahead. Momo smiled, keeping her hands behind her back as she spoke. Great, and Momo, I wanted to thank you again for the crutches, they're so lightweight and comfortable. Izuku turned in his wheelchair and pulled the crutches from the side of the chair frame, slipped them on, and despite the fact that he had tried them on before, he was still surprised at just how well they fitted and how light they were. My pleasure, Izuku, but it wasn't just me though. Mei Hatsume helped out a great deal. She had a large number of notes on your measurements which helped out greatly, Momo explained, causing Izuku to turn a slight shade of red. Oh yeah. The measurements, ha ha ha. Izuku chuckled as he had a temporary flashback to when Mei landed on him, after one of her inventions exploded, followed swiftly by her taking a number of unnecessary and highly personal measurements in a matter of seconds, causing Izuku's slight blush to turn beet red, which was very noticeable by Momo. Are you alright, Izuku? You looked flushed. I'm fine, Izuku yelped, resulting in the entire class turning to look at the scene. Luckily enough, Kirishima, seeming to have clicked to Izuku's embarrassment, decided to divert the conversation. Try them out, Izuku, we've got time before Aizawa arrives. Kirishima pointed at the clock as he spoke. Yeah man, give them a go. Shiro yelled. Come on man, I want to see those sticks in action. Kaminari cheered, and with the two class clowns taking the lead, the rest of the class got involved, except for Bakugo, who saw the act as a waste of time. God, just shut up, Bakugo roared, but he was drowned out by the sounds of chatting, which made Izuku blush, but rather than a sense of anxiety he felt a warmth in his chest as the class's chant grew louder and louder. Try them out. Try them out. Try them out. Try them out. Okay. Let's try them out. Izuku bellowed, resulting in whoops and cheers from the class, with even the usually reserved and stern Iida whooping with more fervor than even Kaminari or Kirishima, causing them to laugh. Izuku readied his feet, his legs and arms shaking a little, a mix of nerves and adrenaline. Just before he attempted his first assisted steps, he took a deep breath and mumbled softly to himself. You can do this. Izuku slowly pushed himself off his chair, and with some shaking he managed to get to his feet. The class were quiet, their eyes focused on Izuku. Even Bakugo watched as Izuku rose to his feet. The class had however not stayed seated, as Iida, Ochako, Momo, Shiro, Tokiyami and Shoto rose to their feet should Izuku's legs buckle. He's up! Kirishima and Kaminari whooped in unison, throwing their arms into the air, followed by a round of applause and cheers, only for another chant to start. Take a step. Take a step. Take a step. You've got this, Izuku. You're on your feet. Let's try walking, Izuku told himself as he prepared to take a step. Unfortunately, Aizawa, who was running a few seconds earlier than usual, had heard the commotion and entered the class at the same moment as Izuku had decided to take a step and had unknowingly ruined the moment. What's going on? Aizawa sternly stated, his glare as potent as ever, causing the class to fall silent, his entrance catching the class off guard, who all dropped to their seats, except for Izuku, whose legs decided to give way, causing him to fall. Izuku! The class cried as they rushed to get to him before he fell. Dark Shadow! Tokiyami proclaimed, releasing his shadowy companion, whose easily manipulated body managed to snake his way under the desks and extend his arm enough to catch Izuku, just before he hit the ground. I've got you. Are you hurt? Dark Shadow asked, his bright yellow eyes shrinking to show his worry. I'm okay. My legs gave out, Izuku sighed, as he was placed carefully onto his chair. And with that answer, the class sighed a breath of relief, until Aizawa started talking. What the hell was going on? Aizawa walked over to Izuku and stood near him, his quirk activated and his hair raised. We can explain. The class proclaimed, and it was Iida who led the charge. Momo and Izuku were discussing the crutches that Momo had made, and we were simply encouraging our Izuku to try them out. Iida explained, but his tone grew quieter and his voice slowed, as he noticed Aizawa had lowered himself so he was on the same level as Izuku. Picking up one of the crutches which were on the floor and scanned them, looking for any imperfections. You made those yayas, Rozu, Aizawa stated, surprised he had not noticed them before, raising his head to watch the vice president, whose head was down, her gaze focused on the floor. Yes sir, with help from the support course. I required specific measurements and an engineer's view of the materials which would be best for the Izuku's specific needs. As Momo spoke, Aizawa looked at every detail, from the attachment site for the cushioned pads on the arms and pinpoints that ran along the lower sections of the crutches to the shock-absorbing pads at the base of the crutches. You've done a good job, Yayarozu. How are you feeling, Izuku? Are you in any pain? Aizawa turned his attention to Izuku, who was keeping his eye contact off Aizawa. All the while Momo took the moment to take a sigh of relief. I'm fine. My legs gave out, and it was my fault that I hadn't realized it until it was too late. Good thing you're not injured, but please take it easy. As for the rest of you, while I am in support of supporting one another, please take care to not use that power to push someone to act when they may not be fully capable yet. Aizawa rose to his feet as he spoke to the room, with his authoritative tone, keeping the class silent. Yes, sir. The class stated in unison, their heads down and voices less enthusiastic than usual. Good. Now that this has been resolved, let's get down to business. Please collect your costumes and head to Training Ground Gamma. I want you all to work on developing non-combative uses for our quirks, as while we have significant experience in using our quirks to fight villains, most of us will be dealing with more mundane tasks as heroes and sidekicks. I'll see you all in 15 minutes. Yes, sir. The class replied and grabbed their costumes from the wall-mounted storage system, with Izuku preparing to wheel himself over to the classroom door, but Aizawa called over to him. Izuku. Could stay back for a second, I wish to discuss something with you. Yes, sir. Is it about the fall, because it was my fault? Izuku muttered, but Aizawa raised his hand to hush him. That's been resolved, so don't worry about it. I was actually going to set you a task for this exercise. Okay. What did you have in mind? Izuku asked, unsure of what was going to be asked. I know you have a knack for analyzing and developing quirk usages, and given this I thought you could help your classmates with developing their quirk uses. If you're up to it. I'm not sure. Izuku scratched his head as he spoke. Let me be honest with you, Izuku. You have a rare talent amongst hero course students. Most of them are solely focused on specific areas that they wish to train, and as a result, they're creating self-imposed restrictions on their full potential. You, on the other hand, have a clear understanding of quirks and potential uses beyond your own, both as a combative and civilian tool, in part due to the difficulties you have had with your own quirk, as well as your general passion for quirk usage. As such, I think having that perspective would help your friends greatly. Aizawa placed his hands together and leaned on his desk as he spoke, with a surprising amount of sincerity in his voice, which caught Izuku off guard. Do you think I can do it, sir? I don't think it. I know it. Now, what do you say? You don't know unless you try, Izuku. Izuku's inner monologue stated, giving Izuku that much-needed internal boost to drive his answer. Sure. I'll try it, Izuku said, with a look of determination in his eyes, which caused Aizawa's lip to curl a little. Good. I'll see you down at the training ground, and once the class is organized you can start. Aizawa waved his student off, as Izuku made his way out of the class, and to Izuku's surprise the whole class besides Bakugo had stayed behind. Hey. You all waited. You didn't need. Izuku stuttered, surprised by the sight. It wasn't a problem, Izuku. Besides, Shoto explained as the rest of the class slowly walked down the hall, only for Mina to jump in, her wild expressive tones, in sharp contrast to Shoto's lower, more monotone voice. We wanted to eavesdrop and find out the hot gossip. Sue, what did old sleepy Aizawa say to you? Mina hopped around Izuku as she spoke, with her usual enthusiasm and energy in both her words and her movements. He asked me to help with the class today. He wanted me to think of ways to apply your quirks. Ooh, that sounds cool. You'll be great at that. Mina chirped with a wide grin on her face. I don't know. Izuku rubbed his head and spoke modestly, not sure about the praise he was getting, but Uruaka disagreed with this. Come on, Deku. You're great at that stuff. Just look at all the journals you've written. You have hundreds of notes on heroes and their quirks, Uraraka said as she took hold of Izuku's wheelchair and pushed him along the corridor.
That's just a hobby though. Izuku sheepishly sighed, only for Iida to join the conversation. All the while, those not involved in the conversation were in the background doing their best to make the journey as effortless as possible. Shiro and Mineta were on door duty, using their quirks to keep the doors and to avoid accidental door collisions with Izuku's wheelchair, while Ojiro used his tail to move or alert other students also they did not bump into Izuku. I have to disagree with you on this, Izuku. That hobby of yours is so much more than that. It has provided you with a skill that is invaluable to a hero. In many ways this skill is beyond that of any physical attribute. You have collated a great deal of information which you have memorized and applied to yourself in S. Look at the cavalry battle, for example. You had enough of an understanding of your team to formulate a plan that allowed you to proceed to the next round. Well, I guess you're right, Iida. Izuku responded, still surprised by the fact that people thought he had a rare gift. That wasn't the quirk he had been given. Don't doubt yourself, Izuku. You have a great deal of skill, beyond just fighting, Shoto stated, with a surprising amount of sincerity and care in his voice. Thanks, Shoto. Izuku smiled as he and the class arrived at the changing rooms. 10 minutes later and the class were in the hero outfits except for Izuku, who, in part due to the time and risks involved, was still in his school uniform. The training ground was similar to that used in the sports festival, but was completely flat, with the entire ground floor being made of concrete, with no areas of grass or dirt. Aizawa had given his instructions and the class has all made their way to try and apply their quirks in non-combative uses. As this was going on, All Might entered the training ground, with a smile on his face. Hello young Midoriya. Hello Aizawa, how are you both? I'm good, just watching over the class, Aizawa stated, turning his gaze back to the center of the training ground. I'm good as well, All Might. Aizawa has tasked me with trying to find non-combative uses for everyone's quirks, Izuku chirped, with a notebook on his lap, and a pencil in hand, with foam guard, to prevent potential skin damage on his fingers from the copious amount of writing he did. That's good, and I know you'll do great, Midoriya, you have a knack for that sort of stuff. Toshinori smiled, nodding as he spoke, before giving Izuku a thumbs up, who moved away from both teachers to help his class. Izuku's first stop was Kaminari, who was at that moment firing shocks of varying voltages around, with Momo being close by, who was producing several small boxes and packages of differing shapes and materials. Which brought an instant spark to Izuku's mind, as ideas flooded his brain. Kaminari, Izuku called, waving his notebook. Hey, Izuku, got your notebook out already? You're taking this serious, ha ha ha. Kaminari chuckled as he stopped his electrical escapade. I've had 2 ideas which I think could make you more versatile. Quote. Okay, fire away. Kaminari pointed at Izuku with his fingers and thumbs in the shape of makeshift pistols, with small sparks being generated at his fingertips. First, you're able to regulate and alter your electrical charge as well as act as an electrical channel, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, I think with greater control you could use this for immediate medical interventions as well as potential enemy detection, Izu stated, showing Kanier a diagram in his notebook. Huh. Kaminari's iconic confused look to center stage as he looked at the diagram and tried to process Izuku's words, but he was stumped. I'm lost. Izuku rubbed his temples with his thumb and index finger as he tried to devise a simpler explanation. Let me explain. I think if you learn to manage your power to deal with lower outputs and inputs, and with a basic knowledge of first aid, you could use your quirk to deal with serious issues, for example heart attacks, as you could shock the heart back into its normal rhythm, like a defibrillator.
Oh, I never thought of it like that. Izuku's confused look vanished as he clicked to what Izuku's plan was.
On top of this, I think, your quirk could even be used to detect hidden or trapped civilians. Quote. How so? Well, let's say someone was trapped under rubble, and you couldn't determine where they were. Izuku laid his example, drawing this as a separate diagram in his notebook, as Kaminari watched. Okay, Kaminari nodded. Your quirk allows you to absorb and contain electrical charges, and there are animals in nature such as sharks, which can detect electrical signals from their prey, by tracking the electrical impulses which their hearts produce with each beat. I think with that absorption ability, you could with contact on a blocked area channel the electrical current in the area, allowing you to detect a human heartbeat or other similar electrical signals. Izuku laid out the idea, and to his surprise, Kaminari seemed to click to the idea. What, so I could do what Jiro does? Kaminari squealed. In a sense, but Izuku tried to explain, but Kaminari decided to shout to Joroi in his usual upbeat cheery tone.
You hear that, Jiro? Izuku just came up with a plan to replace you. Wait, what? Juru cried in a mix of confusion and annoyance as she looked to the green-haired student who was both flustered and blushing. No, 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 that is not what I meant. Izuku waved his arms furiously, trying to diffuse the tension, catching the eye of Momo.
What going on, Kaminari? What have you done to Izuku? Momo asked the electrical teen, moving her gaze to look at Izuku, who was twitching at the thought he had caused an argument. Izuku's just told me my quirk could be used like Jiro's, Kaminari stated with a cheesy grin on his face, causing Momo to take a moment to process the idea. I see, it's just a theory, at the moment Kaminari. Izuku stated, with Momo adding in.
Besides, Juru quirk is specifically designed for this role, so don't go overboard in thinking you're going to take her job. Exactly, thanks Momo. Man. Kamier's smile turned to a sour pout, as his shoulders drooped, which was only made worse by Jiru's comment. Haha, beep it Sparky. Jiru laughed, getting a sour scowl from Kaminari, and with this brief reprieve Izuku's mind snapped back to his job, and as luck would have it his next plan involved Momo. Thanks. Momo, you wouldn't mind waiting for a bit, I have an idea for your quirk if you'd like to listen? Izuku turned to Momo and thanked her. Sure. I would happily take a new perspective. Momo smiled, causing Izuku to blush.
Great, I know your quirk is extremely useful in a non-combative situation, as you're pretty much able to make anything you need so long as you know what is needed to make it, and the lipids to allow its creations. Yes, that's correct. Momo crossed her arms and nodded away, as Izuku spoke. Well, I think a way to further enhance your quirk would be to look into quirk-enhanced equipment, which reminds me, Kaminari. Izuku described his plan, before turning to look to Kaminari and call his name. Yeah man, what is it? Kaminari walked over to the pair. Could you wait here for a few seconds? Izuku raised his hand with one finger pointed to the sky, as he spoke. Sure. What are you up to? Kaminari asked. You'll see. Okay Momo, could you produce something for a search and rescue situation? Izuku looked back to Momo. Sure. Give me a few seconds, and there, Momo stated, as the glow of her quirk engulfed her right arm and from it was a large searchlight, around the same size as Momo herself with a large black cable sticking out of the back. Okay. Now Kaminari, grab onto the cable and send an electrical charge through it. Sure. Kaminari stated as he walked over to the cable and using his quirk, he sent a surge of electricity through the light causing it to glow. I get what your idea is Midoriya. I can create more powerful and complex constructs without taxing my body as much with making a power supply that is enough to power for an extended period of time. Exactly. Plus, I think making items that can use quirks to allow them to work could make your quirk more formidable in combat. Quote. How so? Let's see. Here's a hypothetical. Imagine you're fighting a villain who is too far away or too tough to harm with normal means. What would you do? Izuku opened his notebook and started drawing out his example. I would create something which could hit it at that range and harm it, so that would usually entail me making one of my cannons. Quote. Okay, but here's the thing, you're using your quirk to make, not only the cannon itself but the projectile and the propellant needed to fire. Izuku laid out the issues on the notebook's page, with small heading and footnotes, with a small diagram of Momo with her cannon at the center of the page. Yes. But how could streamline this? Momo asked, puzzled at the idea. So, imagine if you in this example, Bakugo was there, you could use him as a means of propellant, meaning you could make a more powerful cannon and a larger projectile, meaning you able to take on tougher opponents as well as reduce your quirk's lipid usage. Izuku drew a larger cannon and Bakugo onto a separate page and laid out how this strategy could work. That's ingenious Izuku, Momo exclaimed. I've got more ideas if you're interested, maybe we could talk about them after class if you'd like. Gladly, Momo smiled softly. While this had been going on, Kaminari had not left his post, and the searchlight was still on.
Guys. Great, honestly your quirk makes you so flexible, as a support and combat hero, Izuku said kindly.
Guys, Kaminari yelped, which managed to get Izuku to turn around and stated apologetically.
Oh, sorry Kaminari, I should have said, my bad.
It's no problem. Kaminari let go of the cable and waved off the apology, but in his head, a different thought played. So that's how you pick up chicks. Who knew Izuku was so smooth? I'll have to ask him for advice. After this, Izuku moved to his next set of classmates, which were Tokiyami, Kirishima and Mina, who were trying to develop their non-combative skills, but just as he wheeled himself over, he accidentally bumped into Bakugo, did not take kindly to the act. What are you doing, Deku? I'm sorry, Kachan, I wasn't looking. Izuku stuttered, keeping his eyes off the explosive teenager whose gaze was filled with killer intent. Well, watch where you're going, you damned nerd. I will. Kachan. What is it, Deku? Bakugo snarled, letting of an explosion from his hand in the process. I was trying to figure out some ideas for civilian uses of your quirk, and I was looking to speak with you over what could be used. Izuku stuttered turned to a speedy mumble, which Bakugo angered Bakugo even more. If you even suggest an idea, I will explode your ass. You hear me, I don't want or need your help, besides why would I want the advice of a weakling like you? Bakugo snarled, leaning over Izuku, who just quaked in fear. But unbeknownst to the two of them, Bakugo's yelling and Izuku's response had caught the eyes of Mina and Kirishima, who rush over to the pair. What your problem? Mina yelled, standing in front of Izuku, creating space between him and Bakugo. He got in my way, raccoon eyes. Bakugo roared, moving his fingers slowly as if he was readying himself for a fight, which was enough of a tell to allow Kirishima to jump in the middle. Hey man, take it easy, let's go for a quick walk, to calm your nerves, Kirishima stated as she wrapped his arms around Bakugo and walked him away, giving Izuku and Mina some breathing space all the while Bakugo just yelled. Let me go. As this happened, Mina turned to Izuku and looked him over, quickly. You okay, sweetie? He didn't hurt you, did he? Mina's voice was soft and calm, but this wasn't enough to remove the worry from Izuku, who was clutching his notepad tightly to his chest. Oh no, Izuku stated in a panic, but he was soon cut off by the rich and deep voice of Tokiyami, who had walked over to talk to the pair. Why did Bakugo yell at you, Midoriya? Dark Shadow popped his head from Tokiyami's cloak and tilted his head, his bright yellow eyes. I bumped into him, it was my fault. Izuku mumbled, only for Tokiyami to interrupt him. Perhaps, but his conduct was unwarranted, given minor the infraction was, as well as your current condition. Tokiyami crossed his arms at the thought of such conduct being used on someone who was not in any condition to fight back. I 100% agree, Tokiyami. If you want Izuku, I could throw some acid at him. Mina turned from Tokiyami to Izuku and filled her hand with acid. No, don't do that. I could probably hit him from here. Mina shaped the slime into a ball. Don't do that, Izuku cried, as the thought of seeing Bakugo covered in pain-inducing slime and the repercussion that would unfold was enough to cause him to panic. Come on, I wouldn't make its skin meltingly acidic, just enough so it stings. Mina rendered her arm as if she was about to throw a baseball, but Tokiyami decided to speak. I think you've had your fun, Mina, which reminds me. Izuku, if I may, could I run something by you? As Tokiyami spoke, Mina decided to walk over to watch Kirishima and Bakugo, just to be cautious, given Bakugo's unpredictable nature. Sure. What did you have in mind? Izuku turned to face Tokiyami. Well, to be frank, I have a potential non-combative usage for my quirk, which I would like to try out on you. Wait, you want to test it on me? Izuku raised his brow, surprised at the request. Yes. I've tried this technique on a myriad of objects and I feel as if I have gained enough control to use on you. So would be fine with letting me try it on you? Tokiyami explained, with Dark Shadow morphing its body into many objects, from a chair and table to something as small as a fork and as fragile as an egg. Why not? If it helps you, then sure, let go. Izuku smiled as Tokiyami bowed to Izuku, respectfully, then turning to Dark Shadow and spoke to him. Dark Shadow, encompass Izuku, and be gentle. Tokiyami looked at his shadow companion and sternly pointed at Dark Shadow, emphasizing the last point. Got it, Dark Shadow chirped as he reached Izuku's feet, and slowly encompassed Izuku's feet and moved his way up to until he reached his neck. This feels so weird.
Izuku thought as he tried to rationalize the feeling, which was close to a mix of static electricity on the skin of a balloon, and water or glue, in terms of the ever-shifting movements of Dark Shadow's body. Dark Shadow, slowly raise Izuku to his feet. Dark Shadow nodded at Tokiyami's request and slowly raised Izuku to his feet. And it was this act which brought Mina and Kirishima to the fold as they rushed over to the site in a panic, leaving Bakugo by himself. "What are you doing?" the pair cried as they tried to figure out what was going on. "It's fine, I'm helping Tokiyami out with a quirk technique he's thought off," Izuku explained.
"Please be careful," Mina directed her statement to Tokiyami, who nodded his head as he wished to keep his full focus on Izuku and Dark Shadow. "I will. Now Izuku, try walking." "I'll try." Izuku took a deep breath and looked at the ground before attempting his first step. As he did so, he had a flashback to the fall he had in class mere moments ago, causing him to hold himself back. "Are you all right, Izuku?" Tokiyami called, worried he had hurt Izuku, but Izuku didn't respond to his question as he was deep in thought. "I can't let that stop me," Izuku told himself as he gave his head a shake and attempted his first step, and to Izuku's relief as well as to those watching, Izuku did not hurt himself or fall. "This feels weird, like I'm walking on air." "Tokiyami, where did you get this idea from?" Once the training exercise was over, the class made their way to the changing rooms. Once they were back in their uniforms, they made their way to the lunch hall, but Izuku was stopped by Aizawa just before he left the gym department. Aizawa had a more chipper look on his face, with the smallest of curls on his lips and a warm glow in his eyes. "You did very well, Izuku." "Thank you, sir. I never realized how much fun it would be," Izuku said nervously, only for his tone to change to a happier one as he looked back on what he had done to help his friends. "I'm glad to hear that. It is a skill that very few people have, so getting that skill maximized to the fullest will give you an edge that many students and heroes lack. Now catch up with your friends. I don't want to waste your lunchtime," Aizawa stated with a slight smirk on his lips which broke his stone-like resolve. Just as Aizawa was about to continue discussing the value of teaching, he noticed that Kirishima, Uraraka and Iida had stopped at the door to the exit of the changing room area. This caused Aizawa to stop for a moment before deciding to say something that caught Izuku by surprise. "Oh, thank you, Aizawa." Izuku bowed as best he could from his wheelchair, surprised by his teacher's change, and made his way to meet his friends. "Come on, Izuku, we need to get to the cafeteria pronto, or we won't get anything," Kirishima yelled with his usual enthusiasm, throwing his hands into the air. "Coming," Izuku replied as he attempted to move his wheelchair faster, causing Iida and Uraraka's faces to turn to worried expressions. "Take it easy, Izuku. Don't strain yourself. We still have time to get what you want," Iida proclaimed as Uraraka scurried over to Izuku's wheelchair and pushed him, moving at a faster than average pace through the door. "We might get a good spot in the line if we're quick enough," Kirishima bellowed as he and his fellow classmates rushed to the cafeteria. Luckily, the group had managed to get to the cafeteria in just enough time to get into the queue. Through some persuasion, they had managed to get further than the line just in time to get everything they wanted, and made their way to find a seat. "Well, that was lucky, although I think using Izuku's current state to get further up the line was rather uncouth," Iida stated in a disapproving tone. "If you ask me, there should be a separate section to help students who are hurt or limited by their quirks to get their lunches before the rest of their classmates. What do you think, Uraraka?" Kirishima asked the gravity hero as they sat down at their table, with the rest of the class surrounding them, to each side, waving to them as they made their way to the table. "I agree. I mean, look at what happened during the sports festival. Not everyone could get healed enough by Recovery Girl in one go, so many people would have to recover on their own, so why not make a change? Maybe we could start a campaign to get more resources to deal with this," Uraraka stated with a fiery passion as she took her seat. "That's not a bad idea, Uraraka. I know the school has done a lot so far, but that does not mean that there are no further improvements that need to be made. For example, the route to the toilets is only accessible through 2 sets of stairwells. This means in the case of Midoriya, He has to be reliant on one of us to get to the toilets as he cannot go down the stairs without the risk of injury. On top of this, it also slows down the speed at which we can get to the toilets, thus reducing valuable class time. I never thought of that. Nice outside thinking, Iida. Ouch, Izuku said with a smile as he complimented his friend, only for a hard bang to the back of his head to stop him from speaking. What was that? Izuku mumbled as he put his hand on his head and rubbed it lightly before turning to find the cause of the bang. And it turned out to be none other than the poster child of arrogance, the king of copying and all-around class nuisance. Nito Monona. I'm sorry for that. Your big head is a large target, making it difficult to avoid. Monona said snarkily, his dinner tray being the tool used to hit Izuku. You okay? Izuku, you're bleeding. Yuruakra asked quietly, only to yelp when she saw that Izuku's fingertips were covered in a thin layer of blood, which caused Momo and Shoto to tush over to check Izuku's injury, with Shoto producing a small pile of ice that could be used to reduce inflammation. Come on, man, that was uncalled for. Don't you know what happened to Izuku? Kirishima roared, jumping to his feet, with Shoto, Siro and Mineta priming themselves to use their long-range attacks on the copying student, who seeing this smirked and proclaimed. Of course, I know. It's been the talk of the first years. You and your classmates always get into trouble, Izuku. You always act as if you're simply being heroic and doing the right thing, and yet every time you act that way, you always seem to hurt yourself. Doesn't seem very heroic, does it? Monona yelled, only to turn his gaze from Kirishima to Izuku, lowering himself to Izuku's level. However, his comment to Izuku did not go unanswered as Uraraka yelled back. What is your problem? What Izuku did was heroic. He risked his life to stop a villain and save Kirishima. That villain would still be on the streets if Izuku hadn't stopped him. Ha ha ha. You see, this is the thing. Izuku is now a liability. Why is he even here if he cannot train, if he cannot fight, and if he cannot be useful to those in need? A true hero fights through their issues no matter the odds. Izuku, on the other hand, is incapable of doing any of this. He could do better by leaving the school and freeing up a place for another student, as he is a handicap to the rest of your class. Manama heartily chuckled, his eyes wide with a manic glare, before turning his gaze on Izuku. The feeling of shame felt by Izuku caused him to turn away from Manama's glare as the copying teen's words sank in. But Izuku's friends would not let this slide. You say one more word, and I will kick your ass. Kirishima yelled as he attempted to move to the other side of the lunchroom table. Kirishima hardened his fists in preparation to punch Manama, only to be held back by Mina, Kaminari and Shoji. She knew that doing this would get Kirishima in trouble. This commotion was seen by the rest of the students in the lunch hall, and with their mumbling and glares, Izuku's depressed state only got worse as he started to tremble. We need to get him to Recovery Girl to check that cut, Momo said as Uraraka nodded and looked for a way to get through to the nurse's office. Still, the commotion had caused their route to be cut off, as more students were now seated since lunchtime was halfway through. Manama stood directly in front of the clearest pathway to Recovery Girl's office. But to everyone's surprise, a certain blonde-haired teenager quietly rose from his seat at the end of the lunch table and had made his way over to Monona. Listen to me, you arrogant bastard, Bakugo stated sternly but not in his familiar yell. Instead, his voice was surprisingly suppressed and only seemed to make Bakugo more intimidating. This statement caused Monoma to turn to face Bakugo and say in a shocked and angered tone. What did you say? I called you a bastard. You got a problem with that? Bakugo replied with a scowl, his hands flickering with miniature explosions as he moved his fingers, readying himself for Monoma's retaliation. Just Monoma was about to speak, Bakugo interrupted him by leaning in close and whispering, touching Monoma in the process. I will blast your asterisk into the sky if you dare do that to anyone again. You think yourself to be so much better, yet you have failed to prove yourself better than us. Maybe you should consider leaving and make space for someone better than yourself. How dare you? Monoman growled as he was about to copy Bakugo's quirk. His hands started to flicker, only for him to lose consciousness after a loud thwack was heard, causing the copycat teenager to drop to the ground. I am so sorry, Itsuka Kendo said apologetically, bowing down before she grabbed Monoma by the scruff of the neck and dragged him across the ground. This cleared a pathway that gave Uraraka and Izuku the space they needed to get through the lunch hall and rush to Ryosuri Girl to check the cut on Izuku's head. After this, Bakugo walked back over to his lunch and got back to eating, only to be stopped momentarily by Kaminari, who stared in shock at him. "What was that?" Kaminari yelled in shock at his explosive friend. "Who? You stood up for Izuku. So you do care for him." "Shut up. I didn't do it for Deku." Bakugo roared back in Kaminari. "Whoa, chill, I was only asking. So, why did you do it then?" Kamiya yelped, raising his arms into the air and waving off his comment, only to ask the question more subtly. However, his reaction to Bikugo's outburst had brought many eyes to the pair, which caused Kaminari to get more and more annoying and Bakugo more and more annoyed. "That blonde-haired copycat was interrupting my lunch." "Come on, man, we both know that's not true," Kaminari stated, not buying Bakugo's excuse, trying to get Bakugo to continue speaking. Bakugo simply ignored him and continued to eat. "Thinking about Izuku is ruining my lunch. Damn you, Monoma," Bakugo thought. He knew he didn't want to say that he felt sorry for Izuku, or that the way Monoma had been acting was very much like his own manner. Even when Kaminari resorted to poking and even shocking him, he refused to answer. Instead, he stayed silent till lunch was over, even when Izuku and Uraraka returned. Izuku's was lucky to have suffered a minor injury. Bakugo held his tongue till he was in class and refused to comment on his actions for the rest of the day. 1 week after the incident with Monoma and Izuku continued to grow in strength as his body began returning to normal. Izuku was now able to walk for short periods with his custom crutches. He spent either moving around the dorm or moving around the training rooms when he was assisting Aizawa with the training the students did. However, despite Izuku's body growing stronger with each day, he was still far from being able to take part physically in any training. A full day of school was still physically exhausting for Izuku. Walking with the constant strain of tight skin and the fear of cracking bones led to Izuku focusing on every movement, which was mentally and physically exhausting. As a result, Izuku had to use his wheelchair to move around the school or when he wanted to go outside, otherwise, he would have no energy for the rest of the day. But Izuku could not let this stop him from getting back to normal. When he couldn't train physically, he worked his mind, spending the time he would have spent training now developing his mind and writing notes. But as would be expected, Izuku ran out of notebooks, so today was the day he went to restock his supplies. "Thank you both for taking me to the 100 yen store. It's the best place to get notebooks when you're on a budget." Quote, "No need to thank us, Izuku," Iida said with a slight smile on his face. "Yeah, Izuku, relax. We're friends, it's what we do. Plus, can you believe that I got all these nice shirts and shorts? You have no idea how long I've needed these." Uraraka chirped with glee with a big smile on her face. She shook the 3 bags she was carrying. The contents ranged in colors and designs with numerous on-sale labels stuck to the clothes. "I did not expect you to buy all those clothes, Uraraka. Did you really need this many?" Iida asked, with a pair of bags filled with clothes on each arm as he pushed Izuku. "Well, yeah, I've been saving up to buy some clothes, which takes a while when you have to buy notebooks and other class stuff, you know. Besides, my parents don't have a lot of money either," Uraraka replied. Her voice was not as loud as before and almost verged on sounding embarrassed. I knew Uraraka wasn't from a well-of background, but still, Izuku thought as he looked at the gravity hero, noticing the light blush on her cheeks. "How about this, Uraraka? Next time you need books, clothes, or anything else, I'll help you out," Iida stated. "Are you sure, Iida? I'd hate to impose. If it's helping a friend, then I'll do anything." "Same here, I'll help out any way I can," Izuku said, turning in his wheelchair to look at Uraraka with the same supportive look in his eye. "Ah, thank you, guys," Uraraka said, only for a loud disturbance to stop her as Izuku and Iida turned to see a man running off with a pair of bags under each arm. The man was tall and well-built and wearing all gray with a black mask over his face. "Get out of the way," the man yelled, barging past Uraraka and Iida, knocking them to the ground, almost tipping Izuku's wheelchair. Luckily, Uraraka used her quirk just in time to cause the wheelchair to float. She held on before taping her fingers together once she got Izuku's wheelchair touching the ground. "Help, help, that man just robbed my store," the victim said, pointing at the man as he barged past civilians, and the trio realized that there wasn't a hero near, so it was their moment to step on. Uraraka, float into the air and track the thief. I'll try and catch him, Iida stated in his class representative tone. Okay, Iida. Uraraka floated, tapped her fingers together and floated into the air. As she did this, Iida turned his attention to Izuku. "Izuku, I need you to stay out of the way. We don't want to risk you getting hurt, okay? But I need to do something to help," Izuku stated in a high-pitched tone as if he was pleading. This response caused Iida to pause for a moment before replying with, "Okay, there are a lot of people in the way. Can you try and direct them so I get a clear pathway?" Iida. "Okay," Izuku said, sighing as he moved to direct civilians out of the way to clear Iida's path. "Iida, the thief, he's still stuck. Many civilians are leaving an underground exit. They have blocked his path." Uraraka called. "Here goes." Recipro burst. Iida entered his running stance and charged up his calf engines before yelling with all his might. He disappeared from view, jumping and dodging several cars and taxis that blocked his way. However, despite being far away, the thief heard this loud announcement and turned to see Iida bolt towards him. "Damn it, some superpowered brat is trying to stop me, looks like he'll have to get physical," the thief said to himself as he dropped one of his bags filled with cash and other valuables. He put his hand into his pocket, revealing a dark gray automatic pistol. This was seen by Izuku, who, due to hurting the civilians, was close enough to see the thieves. "Iida, he's got a gun. He can't hear me." "Uraraka, the thief has a gun," Izuku yelled, realizing that he was too far away to be heard, so he yelled to Uraraka, who heard him and called back. "We have to get to him," Uraraka stated as she flew in Iida's direction, but she did not have the speed needed to get close to him in time. "Damn," Izuku thought as he tried to wheel himself through the crowd, only for an idea to pop into his head. "If I don't do anything, Iida could die," Izuku mumbled as he rose his left hand up, grabbed his wrist with his right hand, and aimed for a gap which had formed in the crowd that led directly towards the thief. "Here goes, 1% Delaware smash." Izuku took a breath before whispering, building up tension in his middle finger, which was not his usual method. Still, there was a reason for this change. The middle finger is braced by the rest of the bones of the hand. Just in case my hand ruptures, it's at least attached to something, Izuku thought as he held the position before releasing a wave of pressurized air, which, while small, passed under cars causing them to shake violently. Luckily the attack avoided citizens, but the sheer pressure released from the attack almost knocked them over. "Come on," Izuku hissed, holding his injured hand close to his body as he watched the air pressure wave as it raced Iida. "I've got you, no fiend," Iida called in his overly dramatic tone, causing the thief to smile and roar back. "Sure you have, kid." The thief revealed the gun from his side and aimed it at Iida's head, only for his near-perfect aim to be knocked off. His feet were swept from underneath him by Izuku's pressured air attack. This caused him to fire his pistol into the ground, saving Iida from being shot at point-blank range. What was that? Iida thought as he barreled into the thief, using his increased momentum to slam the thief to the ground, knocking the wind from his lungs. Iida took hold of the thief's arm and placed him into an Aikido shoulder lock, which trapped the thief on the ground. "Get off me," the thief gasped, only for Iida to lean on his back with his knee, putting extra pressure on him to make sure he couldn't stand. "That is enough, criminal. You will stay here until the authorities arrive. Uraraka, call the police." "I will." "Izuku, we the thief." "Izuku." Uraraka pulled her phone to call the police, looking at Izuku with a proud smile. She almost dropped her phone when she saw that Izuku was covered in blood, causing her to sprint to Izuku in a panic. What happened? Uraraka scanned Izuku up and down, looking for further injuries. His hand burst and was pouting a lot of blood, but his fingers were still attached. While Izuku's arm was not seriously injured, it was badly bruised by the attack's recoil as the bruise ran up to Izuku's shoulder and grew darker in complexion as time went on. I could just sit there doing nothing. I had to help. Izuku hissed in pain as he tried his best to contain how much pain he was in. You're the reason the thief missed. You used your long-range attack to knock his aim off, Uraraka said, taking one of the clothes from her bag and using it as a makeshift tourniquet. She tied off Izuku's hand to slow the bleeding. Izuku nodded in response. You were very brave, Izuku. You risked your safety to save Iida. You are the definition of a true hero, Uraraka said with a sweet smile on her face. Her eyes had an almost calming effect, which helped ease Izuku's pain. After which, Uraraka stood from her position and got on her phone to call an ambulance after seeing a police car and a local hero arrived to deal with the thief, allowing Iida to come over. Well, that was eventful. Izuku, what happened to you? Iida said, rubbing the back of his head only for his eyes to become as wide as saucers as he saw Izuku's condition. I used my quirk, Izuku said weakly. Why? You were on strict orders not to use your quirk. Otherwise, you could do this to yourself. Iida barked at Izuku, a mix of concern and anger in his voice. Iida, take it easy, Uraraka said, covering her phone as she waited on a reply from the emergency services, trying to get Iida to calm down, but Iida was too enwrapped in his rant to notice. You may lose complete function in your arm because of what you have done. How could you be so reckless? Iida said, concern causing his tone to come off as rude despite that not being his intention. I can explain, Iida. The thief had a pistol and aimed to hit you at close range. I used my quirk to knock his aim off. Otherwise, you would have been killed, Iida. Izuku stated, his voice weak as his skin turned pale, but his words still carried weight despite this. As Iida's eyes opened wide, he thought back to the moment, his mind flicking back to when he was within distance of the thief. He did have his hand in his pocket, and the loud bang, he was carrying a pistol. How did I not see that? Izuku risked his own safety to save me, Iida thought as he replayed the moment from his perspective and analyzed the thief's movements. Even with his enhanced reactions, which were a side effect of his quirk, he only noticed the thief's gun upon a close mental analysis of the moment. He realized that it only became apparent when Izuku knocked the man off his feet with his attack. Thank you, Izuku. I would be dead if you did not take that risk. I'm sorry for shouting at you, Iida said apologetically before deeply bowing in front of Izuku. It's okay. That's what friends do, Izuku said with a weak smile as an ambulance arrived. Izuku, Iida, and Uraraka were taken to the hospital within a few minutes, with Izuku's wounds being tended to by the ambulance crew before they arrived at the hospital. 1 week after the robbery, Izuku recovered remarkably from his horrific injuries with the help of Recovery Girl's quirk. Izuku's durability was now close to his original levels due to the Fragility quirk's effects now being very weak. Thanks to further testing, the effects of the quirk were likely to go in around 2 weeks. Izuku was released from the hospital 3 days after the incident, with his entire class greeting him when he got home. During this small celebration, Bakugo was forced into the situation by Kirishima and Kaminari. They tag-teamed Bakugo to ensure he didn't turn his back on Izuku. Yet it was this response from Bakugo that brought back thoughts to the incident involving Monoma, as he had seen Bakugo's response. After the celebration, the entire class got about their business and completed their duties such as keeping the dorm clean, studying and hanging out until it was time to go to bed. As Iida was a stickler for the rules, he ensured everyone was preparing for bed in a manner befitting a drill sergeant. Alright, everyone, it's 9:45 p.m. We have 15 minutes before bed. Before Iida could finish speaking, Kaminari interrupted Iida, with Kirishima standing just behind him. Kaminari was in dark blue pajamas with numerous yellow lighting bolts stitched into the fabric. Hey, Iida, quick question. Quote, sure. Fire away, Kaminari. Iida said, turning to look at Kaminari. Do you remember whose turn it is to stay with Izuku? Kaminari scratched his head as he spoke. I have a rota on my phone for such occasions, Iida said confidently as he showed Kaminari his phone and flicked through all his notes, with Kirishima peeking over Kaminari's shoulder, catching sight of Iida's phone. Man, Iida sure is focused on keeping a regimented lifestyle. That's so boring, even his screensaver's boring. It's literally one of the default backgrounds you get when you buy the phone, Kaminari thought, and Kirishima seemed to follow the same train of thought said to Iida. Why haven't you got a personal screensaver on your phone? Iida replied in his usual heroic tone. That would be valuable time wasted. Alright, just found it. Uh-oh, Iida said, only for his confident look to turn to a concerned grimace when he checked the rota. What's wrong, Iida? Kirishima and Kaminari said in unison as if they could sense. How did I put it? Iida said as he massaged his cheeks as he tried to organize the words he was going to say. Spit it out, man. It can't be that bad. Kirishima said, his confident smile there to reassure Iida that the news can't be that bad. All right, Bakugo is the one keeping an eye on Izuku tonight. The pair were silent for a moment before Kaminari said in a shocked tone. You're kidding, right? No, I think what happened is that Izuku's stay in hospital knocked the timetable off. Well, who's going to tell Bakugo? Kaminari said, interrupting Iida, after which he, Kirishima and Iida looked at one another, knowing full well how Bakugo would react. 5 minutes later and a loud yell could be heard echoing through the dormitory halls. What the hell? Hey man, it was an error on the rota. Kirishima said in a calming tone, raising his arms in a non-threatening manner as if Kirishima was facing a wild beast that was ready to charge. I don't give care if it is an error or not. Why should I have to look after poor Deku? Bakugo yelled.
Shish, keep it down. People are getting ready for bed. The reasons are clear. You have not taken any days to keep an eye on Izuku. Kirishima has taken all the allotted days you had up to this point. It's not that many 4 eyes. Bakugo grumbled, crossing his arms as he said this, only for Iida to flick quickly through his phone. Once he found his evidence, he shoved it in Bakugo's face. Kirishima has taken 22 days for you, Bakugo. I know you're not the biggest fan of Izuku. Still, you must understand that we all must take responsibility and support one another.
To hell with this, Bakugo roared as she swiftly turned to walk away from the trio, only for Kirishima to speak up. Izuku would do it for you. What did you say? Bakugo turned around and stared the hardening quirk teen down, his eyes filled with killer intent. However, his glare turned away from Kirishima after Kaminari decided to join the argument. He said Izuku would do it for you, plus and Kirishima's right. Izuku would do this for all of us. Even you, the guy who despises him, would be treated like the rest of us because Izuku doesn't care so long as someone in need of help is helped. I don't have to listen to this crap, Baku said, ready to storm off to his room, only for Iida to fire back with surprising anger in his voice. Then you're a coward. If you can't stand sleeping in a room with someone pleasant to you for a few hours, imagine what a villain out of your league will do to you. Bakugo stopped in his tracks, and in a state of surprise, he tried to process Iida's words.
What did you say? Bakugo growled, turning to face the trio, his eyes showing signs of his internal burning anger.
I called you a coward, Bakugo. I'll repeat it if you'd like because how you are acting proves that you are nothing but a coward. I'll give you one more chance to take that back, 4 eyes. Bakugo trudged towards Iida, stopping close enough for their noses to touch Bakugo's, glaring with a fiery rage which, for most mortals, would cause them to melt under the pressure. Still, Iida simply met Bakugo with a cold glare like that he had given to the hero killer Stain. A hero has a duty to help those in need and to support and protect the weak. Yeah, what about it, 4 eyes? Bakugo replied, and Iida replied. You claim you will become the greatest hero and surpass All Might's legacy, yet you despise helping those less fortunate than you, telling them to save their own skin. That does not sound much like a hero now, does it? I will save those in need by destroying villains. They do not need me to help them when I have solved the bigger problems. And what happens once you have done that? A world with no major crimes, a literal utopia. Where would you stand in that world? Iida said. Bakugo surprisingly didn't say anything, allowing Iida to speak again. Your goal has now been completed, and your sole reason for being a hero is gone. So what do you have left? You are not kind to civilians who need your help. You refuse to do the minor tasks required to run and promote a hero agency, and you hate the press. You now have no role in hero society without big villains to fight.
There was a tense silence between the group, only for Bakugo to turn his back on Iida, Kirishima and Kaminari and walk away. What are you doing, Bakugo? Kirishima said, angered by Bakugo's response.
Bakugo then, with a furious glare, stopped at one of the doors, and with a swift kick, he opened the door and yelled. Right, Deku, get your asterisk in bed. What's going on? Izuku mumbled, his toothbrush still in his mouth as Bakugo grabbed his wheelchair and turned it roughly around.
Get to bed, you damned nerd. Bakugo replied as he carted Izuku to his room, slamming the door shut with his foot. As this was going on, Iida, Kirishima and Kaminari just stood by and watched, with all three facepalming themselves, when Bakugo slammed the door.
15 minutes later, Izuku, as well as Bakugo, were lying in their own beds. Bakugo had left Izuku to his own devices and did not help Izuku get into bed. This decision by Bakugo was only possible due to the effects of the incredibly weak brittleness quirk. Looks like I'm going to have a quiet night, Izuku mumbled as he turned in his bed, his back to Bakugo as he closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but, for some unknown reason, Izuku's mind decided to play back to the confrontation with Manama, with his body reflex reacting as if he had been hit on the back of the head again and the words he had said to him. You always act as if you're simply being heroic and doing the right thing, and yet every time you act that way, you always seem to hurt yourself. Doesn't seem very heroic, does it? Izuku is now a liability. Why is he even here if he cannot train, if he cannot fight and if he cannot be useful to those in need? A true hero fights through their issues no matter the odds. Izuku, on the other hand, is incapable of doing any of this. He could do better by leaving the school and freeing up a place for another student, as he is a handicap to the rest of your class. But as Izuku tossed and turned at these thoughts, his mind flicked to Bakugo's words, which, while whispered, were still loud enough for Izuku to have heard due to how close he was. I will blast your asterisk into the sky if you dare do that to anyone again. You think yourself to be so much better, yet you have failed to prove yourself better than us. Maybe you should consider leaving and make space for someone better than yourself. Why did Bakugo step in? That's not how he usually acts, yet he stood up to Manama. I'll have to ask him. Bakugo, Izuku whispered, turning round to Bakugo, who had his back to Izuku and did not respond. He couldn't have fallen asleep that fast. Kitchen, Kachan. What is it, Deku? Bakugo barked, turning round in his bed to face Izuku, who had a startled look on his face. Just spit it out, Bakugo snarled, turning violently around in bed to look at the wall. Why did it take so long for you to answer me? That's your stupid question. I couldn't be bothered answering you, but your voice annoyed me too much to keep quiet.
No, that not my question, Kanchan. Then spit it out, Deku, or I'm going back to sleep. I was wondering why you confronted Monama. What a stupid question. Bakugo huffed, rolling his eyes. Why is that a stupid question? Because it's so simple, Deku. The copycat asshole was ruining my lunch with his constant complaining. I wanted to shut him up so I could enjoy my lunch in peace. I see. But I heard what you said. You rejected what Monama had said to me. Yeah, and what's your point? It sounded like you intervened to stop him from continuing his abuse towards me rather than jumping in because he was annoying you. Bullshit. How did you get to that conclusion? Bakugo almost flew out of his bed as he spoke, causing Izuku to jump up in bed, his hand raised to his mouth. Shish. Everyone is asleep, Kachan. I don't care. I want to know how you came up with such a stupid explanation, Deku. Izuku took a second to compose what he was going to speak, and despite his nerves and the obvious shaking of his hands, Izuku stated. If you had been annoyed with Monoma's ranting, you would have intervened as soon as he went on for too long. On top of this, your intervention came after Monoma told me I would be better off leaving the hero course. You told him to leave the hero course cause he hadn't proven himself to be better than us. Izuku explained, while Bakugo sat down and stayed quiet, allowing Izuku to finish, which for Izuku was somewhat unnerving, as normally if Bakugo rejected a statement or claim, he would explode suddenly, as such pure silence was unnerving for Izuku. This resulted in Izuku speaking again to break the uneasy silence. "So, why did you stop Monoama? As I said, he was pissing me off and ruining my lunch." Banko scowled. But Izuku, rather than simply accepting this answer and going back to sleep, rejected Bakugo's explanation. "I don't believe you. You calling me a liar, Deku?" Bakugo rose from his bed and slowly walked over to Izuku, his hands clenched shut in anger. "No, Kachan, I'm not calling you a liar." "Good." Banko rolled his eyes and turned his back to Izuku, but Izuku wasn't finished speaking. "I think you're scared to say that you felt sorry for me." Bakugo, in response, huffed at the comment. "As if I'd feel sorry for you, Deku. You're barely a rival to my goal of being the #1 hero, so why would I feel bad for you?" Bakugo responded, snarling like a wild beast, but Izuku, knowing this would happen, did his best to keep his cool. "Do you remember what you said to me when I was helping Aizawa with the training exercise?" Bakugo's snarling stopped. "You told me that you would refuse to listen to my advice and called me a weakling. I think you realized that you went too far, and when Monoama did the same thing, you couldn't stand by because you try to hold everyone to the same high standards as you hold yourself." "Bullshit," Bakugo stated in an explosive tone, but Izuku, not fearing Bakugo's wrath, continued as he could tell in Bakugo's eyes that this was false anger. "Stop fooling around, Bakugo. Be honest and tell me why you stopped, Monona." Off. Bakugo growled, but before he could finish, Izuku, in a role reversal, roared in anger. "Why do you hate me? I have done nothing to you. I've been kind and polite to you, and every time I speak to you or ask how you are, you throw it in my face, and when I ask you why you intervened, you throw that question back at me like it burns you." "Shut up already." Izuku stayed quiet. "All right, I'll talk. I stopped Monama because I felt sorry for you. After you helped the class, I realized that what I said was too harsh, and when Montana started speaking like that, I saw myself. You happy with that, Deku?" Bakugo explained in a sorry mumbling tone, a hint of anger behind his words, like due to both feeling angry with himself and the fact he was finally. "Yeah." Izuku sighed, rubbing his eyes due to tiredness. His mind, for a second, returned to when Bakugo confessed his fear of being the cause of All Might retiring. While Bakugo was not near as upset and frustrated as he had been that day, Izuku could tell by his tone that he was genuine in how he responded. However, this short moment of weakness did not last long, as Bakugo flipped from genuine sensitivity to bullish arrogance in a matter of seconds. "And don't think this makes me any weaker in your eyes, Deku." "It doesn't, Kachan." Izuku mumbled, but Bakugo, hearing this partial sentence, went straight into his bed and turned his back to Izuku. "Good. Now get to sleep, Deku. Otherwise, I will make you sleep. You got that?" Banko stated in his usual threatening tone, content in his own way that he had managed to speak his mind. However, he would not let Izuku know of this due to the underlying fear that Izuku could use this information against him, despite all evidence to the contrary. And with this, Izuku stayed silent, turned around in his bed, and closed his eyes, a sense of ease coming over him as he slowly drifted to sleep. 1 week later, Izuku was at the hospital for a checkup on his condition. He arrived at the hospital at 9 a.m. He was accompanied by Toshinori, who would take Izuku back to school once the checkup was over. Inside the doctor's office, Izuku was thoroughly checked by the doctors and recovery girl, so she could log Izuku's condition in the UA's medical records. On top of this, her quirk would be helpful if Izuku's body was injured during the examination. The doctors checked Izuku's skin, muscles, bone, and blood vessels for any signs of fragility. After 10 hours of testing and data analysis, the results were in. The pair sat in a couple of chairs next to one another as they waited on the results. "How are you feeling, young Midoriya?" Toshinori asked, placing his hand carefully on Izuku's back. He could tell from this contact that Izuku's body, while looking similar in weight, was not as muscular as it had been before the incident with Sando. "I am a bit nervous." "That's natural, Izuku. I don't know many people who don't find a doctor's office uncomfortable," Toshinori said, a hint of uneasiness in his voice as he looked around the room and the different types of anatomy charts on the walls. "Even you?" Izuku said, raising his brow with a slight smile on his face, as Toshinori turned and looked at his success with his piercing blue eyes and said, "Yes, even I'm scared of doctors' offices. They bring back uncomfortable memories." Toshinori held his injured side as he said this, the words causing his wound to ache. "I can imagine. After all, you have been through, no wonder you get nervous." Izuku mumbled as he remembered seeing the damage done to his predecessor's body from his battle with All for One, but Toshinori interrupted Izuku's mumbling. His voice was low and somber. "It's not just the physical wounds, Izuku. My friendship with Sir Night-Eye collapsed due to my stubbornness. I was the symbol of peace. It was my duty to keep the world safe, and once I realized that I was running out of time, I could not face that fact. Sir Night-Eye tried to help me, but my pride and fear were too much for our friendship to bear. Hospitals just bring back those terrible moments." "I understand." Izuku was about to continue speaking only for the main door to the room to open with two doctors and recovery girl entering the room. Once they entered, a very tall and slim doctor closed the door, pulled a chair over, and sat beside his colleagues in front of Izuku and Toshinori. "So dear, how are you feeling today?" Recovery girl said in a frail but warm voice. "I feel good, thank you for asking. I can tell there is some color in your cheeks. Here, have a sweet." Recovery girl beamed, putting her hand in her pocket to pull out an assortment of sweets like a miniature rainbow of shiny sweet wrappers. Izuku, not wanting to be rude, decided to pick the sweet with the shiny green wrapper, which he unwrapped and put in his mouth. Mint. Izuku thought as the hard sweet began to soften. "Now, Izuku, after much rigorous testing, we have your results," the tall doctor said, taking a set of papers out of a folder and shuffling them, so they were in line with one another before being read out. For Izuku, what was only a few seconds, felt like an eternity, as his perception of time slowed to such a point that it felt like time had frozen. This realization was seen by Recovery Girl, as she noticed the glassy look in Izuku's eyes, so rather than allow one of her colleagues to read the results, she took the papers and revealed the results herself. "Based on the test results, we are happy to announce that the effects of the fragility quirk have subsided, and you are now free from its effects," Recovery Girl said in a very soft and kind voice that took a few seconds for Izuku to process before his glassy eyes returned to normal. "I'm fine?" Izuku muttered, his mind trying to process the good news. "Yes, that's right, the fragility levels of your skin, muscles, bones and blood vessels have returned to normal levels for a quirk-possessing person." "That's amazing news, Izuku." Cough cough. Toshinori screamed with glee as he jumped from his chair with joy, only for his body to remember that he wasn't back to his old self as a massive cramp-like sensation caused the former number one hero to clutch his side and cough so hard some blood dripped down his lip. "Take it easy, Toshinori. We don't need another patient," Recover Girl said in an annoyed and concerned tone as she slowly walked over to her old friend to ensure he had not caused himself any injuries. 2 minutes later, after Toshinori was checked over, the doctors returned our attention to Izuku. "Well, Izuku, now that your body is free from the effects of the fragility quirk, you will now be able to return to your studies at UA," the tall doctor said, only for Recovery Girl to interrupt. "However, I must restate this, given you have a noted history of overtraining. Take it slowly. While your body may be able to train, you are still doing physiotherapy to return function to your body. On top of this, you need to retrain your stamina and strength, as these will also be reduced due to your inactivity. We will provide this information to UA so that they can structure lessons and training to accommodate these changes," the short doctor stated. As soon as he was finished, Toshinori also joined in. "Don't worry, young Midoriya. Give me a few days, and I will have prepared." Toshinori slowly rose from his seat, and as he paused, a puff of white smoke appeared, and the frail Toshinori was replaced with the imposing figure of All Might, with his perfect smile on full display as he spoke. The American Dream training regime, however, as quickly as this appeared, another puff of smoke appeared. The former number one hero returned to his true form with a painful cough following suit. "Toshinori, what did I tell you?" Recovery said in a scolding manner as she again checked Toshinori. After 10 minutes, Izuku and Toshinori were given the all clear. The pair left the doctor's office and made their way to the exit. It had been planned that the pair would get an escorted car to Ua. Still, Toshinori convinced Yue that he would escort Izuku back to Ua himself. Given the nice weather, it was an excellent excuse to take a slow walk with Izuku being pushed in his wheelchair. Today is a perfect day for a slow walk, Izuku. Yeah, it is Toshinori. I'm surprised you managed to get Ua to agree to this, Izuku said as he turned around slightly in his wheelchair. Trust me, Izuku, while I might not be as handsome as I used to be, I know how to charm people. Sure. Izuku teased, turning back around in his chair. This caused Toshinori to huff and say, I'm serious. This response only caused Izuku to laugh. Ha 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 ha. I've seen you try and convince Aizawa before, and they never go to plan. That's not true. Toshinori tried to reply, but Izuku jumped in. 3 weeks ago, you tried to get Aizawa to give the class a day off from their post-school training as you thought they needed a break to recover. Yeah. And I saw you try your classic, charming offensive on Aizawa, with your big cheesy grin or your really sad eyes. I did not do that. Toshinori grumbled, but his tone suggested he was aware that he wasn't being truthful. You even tried to go buff mode to reinforce the point, Izuku, while saying this did a front double bicep pose as if he was all might. And Aizawa instead made the class into an extra hour of training to emphasize the point that official heroes don't get to rest or relax when they're on the job. Oh. Now that you mention it, that does explain why you were late to our meeting. My bad. Toshinori sighed as his mind flicked back to the moment, and as if a light bulb went off in his mind, he remembered the moment in uncomfortable clarity. You'll get Aizawa to agree to one of your ideas someday. Not sure when that will be, but stranger things have happened before, Izuku said. You're right. I guess, Toshinori said, grumbling under his breath, which caused Izuku to chuckle. The pair continued their chat for around 40 minutes before arriving at the Ua dormitory. The pair stopped at the door. Izuku, turning round in his chair to grab the crutches he had, which brought on a curious look from Toshinori. I could take you in before you need to get up, it wouldn't be a bother. I haven't been through these doors on my own feet for so long. I want to break that streak. Izuku's grip on his crutches grew tighter. This comment caused Toshinori to pause for a moment and brought a small smile to his face as he could see the flames of progression and self-development. Go for it, Toshinori said, raising a thumbs up to his successor, who smiled and took a deep breath. You've got this, Izuku. With his crutches in hand, he walked to the door, and with some effort, he pushed the doors open to find that the main hall of the dorm was pitch black. Everyone must be out doing training. Toshinori, do you have any idea what training I've missed? Izuku mumbled as he turned to flick the power switch to the lights, turning to see Toshinori smirking as he flicked the dorm lights on. Surprise! The room erupted with the sounds of cheers and party poppers, which Izuku took time to notice as he adjusted to the brightness of the room. The door was covered in colorful decorations, from bright red and green streamers to multicolored balloons. The entirety of Class 1A was there, as was Aizawa. To Izuku's and Toshinori's surprise, they saw the stone-faced vigilante with a party hat on his head. You guys. This is too much, Izuku said bashfully, wiping his eyes as he looked at the decorations and buffet food on the communal table in the dorm room. Nothing is too much for a friend, Kirishimiya said as he walked over to Izuku, wrapped his arm around his, and directed him to the rest of the group. What do you think, Deku? Ochako said as she gave her close friend a soft but warm hug. Izuku blushed, which was visible to the rest of the group, who either chuckled or, in the case of Mineta, cursed under their breath at the fact Izuku was being hugged by one of the cutest girls in the class. It's amazing, Ochako! Izuku yelped in a mix of nervousness and excitement, with Izuku's sudden burst of nervously excited energy causing Ochako to blush. The hats were my ideas, Mina bellowed with pride, getting Izuku's attention. They are great. How did you get Aizawa to wear one? Izuku asked, only for Aizawa himself to answer. I may be cold in terms of my general demeanor. Still, I am not averse to organizing and participating in fun events. Aizawa said this in his usual tone with no emotion in his voice, which would have caused an awkward pause if it wasn't for Mina, who sensing the oncoming awkwardness, said. Anyway, You can't have a party without a hat. Mina pulled a party hat and placed it on Izuku's head. He blushed from how close he was to Mina and chuckled, after which Izuku was drawn to the seating area of the dorm with Aizawa going over to talk to Toshinori, who had a party hat on his head and was tucking into some of the party food. It's good to hear that Izuku is no longer under the effects of that fragility quirk. It has been a tough couple of months, Aizawa said. It has. But Izuku is a strong kid. I have no doubt Izuku will be back to his old self in no time now that he can get back to training. I agree. Although I will have to keep an eye on him, given his history of excessive training. Aizawa said, looking at Izuku with his battle-worn eyes, remembering the first time he deactivated Izuku's quirk to ensure he didn't break his arm while doing the mock test he had prepared. Ha ha ha, it's not often you can complain about someone working too hard, Aizawa. Toshinori chuckled, nudging his friend and noticing that Aizawa had a small toothless smile on his face. He looked at his students standing around Izuku, enjoying themselves and acting like teenagers. Yes, you are right, it's not a common complaint. Besides, based on how everything looks, it won't just be you and me keeping an eye on Izuku. Toshinori said softly as he pointed to Aizawa that everyone around Izuku was being incredibly cautious, with Kirishima keeping Bakugo to the outskirts of the group, given his explosive tendencies. They're a good group of kids, Aizawa said quietly. It was his policy to not form strong emotional bonds with people, given both the nature of his form of hero work but also how it would affect his capacity to be impartial, but even he had to admit to himself that he had grown fond of his class, and though he wouldn't say to his class, he was proud of them and the work they had put in to not only become future heroes, but also the time and support they had given Izuku over this long and arduous time.
They are. Toshinori sighed contentedly as he took a drink and watched as he saw his successor enjoy his life, which filled the former #1 hero with pride. While Izuku was not back to his old self, he knew that he would get there thanks to his self-determination and the support of a group of friends, who would do anything to make sure Izuku would not go through this difficult process alone. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.